All sports, all the time.
There's heroes and there's legends. Heroes get remembered. Legends never die.
This is the Spoken Podcast.
Hold your ears, folks. It's showtime.
I'm your host, Lance Twidwell.
Man, that kid, he can ball, man. He can ball.
Touchdown, Kansas City!
Patrick freaking Mahomes, baby!
Let's talk some sports, because that's what we're here to do.
You are tuned in to The Spoken.
Spoken Podcast. I am your host, Lance Twidwell, here inside the Spoken Studios with my guys, Trevor Twidwell.
What's good?
And Trevor Twidwell, because our guy, Mr. Yo, Eddie Ortiz, is out of commission this week. He's actually enjoying himself a nice little vacation. We wish him nothing but the best. I know that it seems like every couple of weeks our guy, Eddie Ortiz, is missing, but you know what? We hold the fort down here because this show continues no matter who's out, no matter who's on the shelf, no matter who's on the disabled list, the IL as the MLB likes to call it now. We keep this bad boy rolling because 163 is in full swing, full motion. We are so happy for you to be here with us and for us to be here with you, whether you're live streaming, whether you are YouTubing, or whether you're podcasting. We want to thank you so much for making some time and allowing us to take some of your time because we got a lot to talk about. There's a lot of things going on in the world of sports, and I think that you guys understand that all too well because the news cycle never ends. There's always something to talk about. There's always something to discuss, and that is why we have a show each and every week. I don't really understand sometimes, not to get on a high horse here when it comes to our show, but I take a lot of pride in how we do things here at the Spoken Podcast because if you follow us on our Facebook page, on our Twitter page, you see that there is constant sports news being discussed. And I don't know how some of these shows don't have enough to talk about or don't have things to talk about because I feel there's always something to discuss. Well, we got a lot to discuss when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs, which is why we have not a guest, but a brother of the show and a personal brother of mine. Blood doesn't make us any closer than what we are. Our guy, the OG Chiefs fan, the guy that I love dearly and respect very dearly, and his opinions are always on point, and he can go into a trance, let me tell you. If you've not followed Shaggy Shane's work, you've not listened to Shaggy Shane talk yet, you about to. It's going to happen in less than an hour's time from now. Our guy Shaggy Shane Williams from the Shaggy Shane Show will be joining us, and we will be discussing a lot of controversial topics, as you would imagine, because when it comes to our show, when it comes to Shaggy Shane's, when it comes to anybody that I wouldn't say that we have an inner circle, but the people that we associate with, whenever we have discussions like this, it's always going to be honest. It's always going to be true. It's going to be raw. And you're going to hear the true, genuine opinion of what we are and what we're about when it comes to Chiefs football, when it comes to any sports-related topic, because no one holds us down. Am I right, Trevor? We're not affiliated to anything, and we do what we do. We say what we say, and we mean what we mean. And that's actually where I'm going to start right now, because if you guys remember, I had a very honest and upfront opinion outwardly on social media when it came to the Chiefs trading Tyreek Hill. And I'm not going to go through all that again. I'm just going to give you guys a brief synopsis. I was very upset and distraught about that trade because I didn't really understand how that's going to help the Chiefs win another Super Bowl in the now. Maybe it'll help them later, but in the now, that didn't make a lot of sense. Then we found out that Tyreek wanted to be closer to home. We knew that he wanted to make record-breaking money, and that's all that needed to be said at that point. That's all that needed to be discussed because that's all that really mattered. He didn't want to be here in Kansas City anymore. He wanted to be closer to family, and I can't blame a man for doing that. And I called out Brett Veach for that. Before I knew that actual part of the very important part of this portion of the story, I called out Brett Veach. I said this was the stupidest decision in the history of Chiefs football. And I meant that. But then when context came into play, we realized that there was more to it, and I can't blame Brett Veach for making a decision I felt that was the only decision to be made because the decision was going to be made for him regardless. And so what I decided to do this week is I decided to create a thread, and I took a good amount of my day a couple days ago to really dive deep into Brett Veach's draft history. And the reason why that's so important is because the only thing the Chiefs got back in the Tyreek Hill trade was draft picks. And the Chiefs currently sit at 12 total draft picks. Now, I believe 4 of those picks are 7th-round picks, which are usually just used for ammunition to trade up or trade for a player. It's just to sweeten the deal a little bit. We never really see the Chiefs take guys in the 7th round. I think the last guy they took in the 7th round was Nick Allegretti a couple of years ago. And that ended up actually being a pretty good pick, and I'm going to get to that in just a second. But the most important thing I want to say in all this is I do think it's time that we give Brett Veach some real credit when it comes to his draft history. Because I know that the foregone conclusion early on was was that he couldn't draft properly, or he was swinging and missing, which is why he had to go and trade for guys like Frank Clark and make up for some of the decisions he has made. Because Breeland Speaks was his first pick, and Breeland Speaks was essentially not a football player. I think he only played a couple games, if that, and that was the end of his NFL career. And that was the first one. So I know that first impressions matter a lot, which is why this was, naturally such big shoes for Brett Veach to fill, because he was coming into a position of replacing John Dorsey, who, albeit, had his own problems when it came to contractual issues, which has actually been Brett Veach's bread and butter. But John Dorsey knew talent, and the man could draft talent. He understood talent. Bear in mind, he also was the guy that took Baker Mayfield with the number 1 overall pick, and that so far has not panned out. But nevertheless, John Dorsey does talent, and he's been able to build and construct good rosters around quarterbacks with the Chiefs and with the Browns. And he was a really good consultant and a really good talent evaluator even all the way back in his Packer days. But Brett Veach had big shoes to fill, and I think that he's done a better job than we're giving him credit for. And I want to go down a little path real quick, if you guys will allow me, because I did post this on my Twitter page. I did post this on the Spoken Facebook page, but I do want to break this down a little bit right on here for those that did not see it, because I think it is important that we do give this man proper credit going into this next draft, and why we should be confident that he's going to find some talent in this next draft. So according to Pro Football Reference's draft value metric, this goes back to 2017. I found this online because I really wanted to break this down based upon metrics, because I know that's a big thing. People follow Pro Football Focus. People are very much into analytics now, and I think that's fair. I think that's something that we need to look at and evaluate when it comes to adding young talent to this team. Over 16% of draft picks never play for the team that drafted them. 37% are considered busts. 15% are considered low value or poor picks. And over 10% are considered average. Over 12% are considered good. And only less than 7% are considered great. The Chiefs have made 24 draft selections since Brett Veach took over the GM role in 2018. The 2018 class was by far Brett Veach's worst to date. But even as underwhelming as it was, 4 of the 6 players drafted played in at least 49 of the 65 possible regular season games from 2018 to 2021, and 2 of them, Derek Nottie and Dorian O'Daniel, are still contributors on the Chiefs roster to this day. Both Nottie and DOD were third-round picks. And Armani Watts, although exclusively a special teams player, was active in 53 of the 65 games played from 2018 to 21 and had 58 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 3 quarterback hits as a special teams player. And as we all know, Armani Watts is no longer with the Chiefs now after this offseason. In 2019, the class wasn't great, but much better than 2018, despite not having a first-round pick because they traded to Seattle for Frank Clark. Brett Veach managed to land 3 starters, which was McCole Hardman, Juan Thornhill, and Rashad Fenton. And 1 fringe starter in Nick Allegretti, as I mentioned before, in the 7th round. 5 of the 6 players from that class are still on the Chiefs roster. Hardman and Thornhill were 2nd-round picks. Fenton was a 6th-round pick. And again, Allegretti was a 7th. 2020's class gave Veach his first and only to date first-round pick, and it was Clyde Edwards-Helaire. How good, bad that decision was remains to be seen, but landing 2 stud defensive starters in Willie Gay Jr. and L'Jarius, as I like to call him, Lord Jarius Sneed, in the 2nd and 4th round picks make up for that if, in fact, CEH doesn't pan out the way we expect them to as a first-round pick. Not to mention the fact that Veach also added potential starter depth at right tackle in Lucas Niang in the 3rd round and at defensive end in Mike Dana in the 5th. Both have been effective contributors when healthy and or given the opportunity to be effective contributors. 2021's class is by far Veach's best. Not only did Veach land 3 starters, he landed 3 prolific starters. Creed Humphrey is already the best center in football, outside of Jason Kelce, who's going to be 38 years old this season. Nick Bolton led all rookies in tackles, and Trey Pancake Papa Smith is a top-tier right guard in this league already. And the best part is, none of them were first-round picks. 5th-round pick Noah Gray showed promise at tight end behind and beside veterans Travis Kelce and Blake Bell. And Joshua Kando was kept on the team despite being a 4th-round pick that played very little. So out of 6 picks, only one, Cornell Powell, looks to be a bust, and he was a 5th-rounder. Those are flyer picks. Here are the star starting players Brett Veach has drafted and what round they were drafted in. Creed Humphrey, 2nd round. Nick Bolton, 2nd round. Trey Pancake Papa Smith, 6th round. Lord Jarius Sneed, 4th round. Willie Gay Jr., 2nd round. McCole Hardman, 2nd round. Juan Thornhill, 2nd round. Rashad Fenton, 6th round. Here are average backup players Brett Veach has drafted and what round they were drafted in. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 1st round. Mike Dana, 5th round. Derek Nottie, 3rd round. Nick Allegretti, 7th round. Lucas Niang, 3rd round. Noah Gray, 5th round. DOD, 3rd round. Amani Watts, 4th round. Colin Saunders, 3rd round. To be determined or bad players Brett Veach has drafted and what round they were drafted in. Joshua Kando was in the 4th. Cornell Powell was in the 5th. Thacarius Keys, 7th. Darwin Thompson, 6th. Breland Speaks, 2nd. Tremont Smith, 6th. And Khalil McKenzie, 6th. In other words, Brett Veach has drafted star players or starting players, or what they called good or great according to the metric, with 33% of his draft picks. With role players and backups or average poor players within the metric, 38%. And the to be determined or bad picks are only 29%. Of the 8 star starting players, 0 of them were drafted in the 1st round. 5 of them were drafted in the 2nd round, 1 in the 4th, and 2 in the 6th. Of the 9 average or backup players, 1 was drafted in the 1st, 4 were in the 3rd round, 1 in the 4th, 2 in the 5th, and 1 in the 7th. Of the to-be-determined bad players, 0 were drafted in the 1st, which means he's not had a true bust yet. 1 was in the 2nd, 1 was in the 4th, 1 was in the 5th, 3 in the 6th, and 1 in the 7th. 29% of 24 picks being let's see or bad players isn't bad, especially when you consider the overwhelming majority of said picks were drafted in the 4th round or later. To me, the fact that over a third of Veach's draft picks have become star players, along with the fact that another third of those picks have been solid average contributors, gives me much more confidence that he can identify NFL talent in this draft. Only 4 drafts in, the Chiefs have 8 sure things. That's two star or starting players per draft. That is significantly better than the average draft class league-wide, considering the metric this entire thread is based upon. Even if Veach trades multiple picks in the 2022 draft, even if Veach misses on multiple draft picks in the 2022 draft, the fact that he has 12 picks to work with and the percentage tells me that the Chiefs will get at least 2 stars in this draft excites me greatly. And although he has a ton of work to do, and we're going to talk plenty about it when it comes to retooling this defense alone, I think it's time that we give Brett Veach all the credit and respect he deserves as the Chiefs GM and anticipate a very good upcoming draft class and draft classes for years to come. So this is where I want to really dive deep into all this, because as you guys see, I took the time to get these numbers down. I wanted to see the truth, the bare truth of Brett Veach's history so far. Only 4 drafts in, has gotten the Chiefs 8 star/starting players in this on this roster. He has 9 starters on this team already. Think about that. Will Clyde Edwards-Helaire end up becoming something special? I don't know. They wouldn't sign Ronald Jones. They're probably going to get some guy later in the draft if they hold on to some of these picks. Maybe another running back later in the draft. But the fact is that that's the worst of the early picks in his draft classes. I think he's done a lot better than most people suggest, especially when you say that less than 7% of picks in the draft are considered great, and over 16% of players never even play for the team drafted. I think Brett Veach has done a pretty good job. Trevor, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know why we're at this point we're doubting the man. He hasn't given us too much room to doubt, too much reasons to doubt in my mind. He's drafted guys, just last season, last draft might have been his best draft yet. I think we got 3 starters out of that draft, and completely got 2 guys that helped rebuild this entire offensive line to being one of the best in the league. And I look forward to it being even better next year, and then this season's coming ahead of that. So, I don't listen. Everyone's tense right now. Because there's so much unknown, right? When you lose a talent like Tyreek Hill, it's going to put everyone into a frenzy. Losing a talent like that in the prime of his career is just something that, some people can pull the trigger on that kind of move. Some people can't. And we don't know if that was the right move yet. That we don't know if that's going to pan out for us. That could be the beginning of the end. I'm not trying to be a doomer right now, but that could definitely be an outcome here. But I tend to think the other way. I think we got the leverage on that move. I think Patrick Mahomes is a transit talent. I think Andy Reid is one of the greatest coaches of all time. Those 2 things are in place. So building around that tends to make things. Look at all these teams struggling, trying to find the next Patrick Mahomes, trying to overpay for Deshaun Watson and his uncertainties and all these things that are going on. Overpaying for Aaron Rodgers at this point in his career, if I'm being honest. Yeah. All these things that are going on in the NFL. Yet here the Chiefs are with the best quarterback and the best head coach in the NFL right now. And we have 12 draft picks, and we're fearing things, and we're worried as fans. I get it, man. I get it, but it's irrational. It really is an irrational thing if you stop and think about it, because we are the best team in the AFC still, to my mind. We are still the team to beat. We are still the team that most teams fear and that are trying to build their teams around to beat. And yet we have the most leverage going into the draft. You couldn't be in a better situation outside of losing Tyreek, obviously. But if you're going to be without Tyreek Hill, this is the best position you can be in with all the leverage, all the picks you want to do. If you want to move and go find a player in this league, a proven commodity, which is definitely something that can definitely happen during the draft. But, doubting Brett Veach right now is just a silly thing. If he completely blows this offseason and blows this draft and we get we don't get anybody of note in this draft, and there's guys that go before and after us that we could have gotten before or after the picks we stuck with, then we can have a conversation about that. But until that point, I have nothing to, especially after coming off this last season's draft, no reason in my mind to doubt his ability. And mind you, this is not just Brett Veach that we're talking about. This is him, Andy Reid are a marriage, right? This is a thing that they're together on these decisions in the draft. So Andy Reid analyzing talent, I have full faith in as well. And someone being another part of that mind with Andy Reid is Brett Veach, a young mind that's still developing as a GM, still a young guy, one of the youngest GMs in the league still. There's going to be growing pains, but I think he proved last season. Last season was the one that was like, okay, he completely changed his offensive line in one offseason into one of the best in the league, and that's something you got to respect. That's something you got to understand, that this guy knows what he's doing, and he's got great people around him to help make the best decisions. And it all starts with the quarterback and coach, like I said. It all circles back to that. You have the nucleus there for success. It's just building the pieces and finding the guys around them to succeed. And since Brett Veach has been the GM here, we've been to 2 Super Bowl, almost 3 Super Bowl, well, almost 4 Super Bowl trips if we're being honest. So any other team, any other franchise, any other fan base would take that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Any other team would sacrifice Tyreek Hill to have that resume as their GM in this position that we're in right now. So I think fear. I think it's an irrational fear right now for Chiefs fans. I think it's irrational to start criticizing guys like McCall Hardman and their loyalty to this team when he's done nothing but be loyal to this team and like it or not, make comments about wanting the ball more.
Yeah.
How is that not something you want as a fan of a player? You want the ball more. He could be a guy that's just not giving you anything and just taking his jersey off and throwing it out and walking off in the middle of the game. Those things could be happening, but no, he's here. He's proven he wants to be here. This is his best moment, this best season, best opportunity to shine. So listen, as far as the fan base and the internal feuds that are going on, we gotta let this play out, man. And I'm excited more than fearful, honestly.
Well, and I want to say something about, because I think we've been very transparent on how much credit we give John Dorsey for building the nucleus that started this whole thing, because he did.
Yeah.
He absolutely did. And it all starts with, the pinnacle of it all, rather, is Patrick Mahomes. That John Dorsey did take him, and he did trade up for him and trade up 17 spots to get him in the 2017 draft. But I'm going to say this. and this isn't trying to give Brett Veach unnecessary credit, but we all know that he not only scouted Patrick Mahomes and told John Dorsey and Andy Reid, this is the guy we need to get.
Right.
But I would imagine, and I kind of wish the Chiefs would have done it this way, where I think they knew they were going to move on from John Dorsey. I wish they would have moved on from John Dorsey before the draft, because we both know that Brett Veach would take Patrick Mahomes in that draft.
Yeah, we were on board with him the whole way.
So either way, Patrick Mahomes was going to be a Chief. So although we can give John Dorsey that credit, although we can say, look, it happened under his, it was his regime still.
Yeah, it wasn't like Veach was like in the war room, like fighting against him.
Exactly.
No, we want this guy.
Yeah, it wasn't like he was, pining for Deshaun Watson or anybody else. He was saying this is the guy. So he's the one that really ignited it. So we got to give him credit from the beginning. Right. So even if he was the GM at that time when the draft did take place, because he was the GM the next month, it would have still been Patrick Mahomes. We have to clarify that part of it. And so that's where I want to give Brett Veach a lot of credit here, is I think this man does know talent. The inexcusable part of all this is going and getting Breeland Speaks with your first pick.
Yeah.
Because of that, I think that a lot of the negative notions that are attached to Brett Veach's draft ability is why we sit the way we do. And the other criticism, and it is fair, is the only other pass rushers he's gotten in the draft are Mike Dana, a fifth-round flyer, who's been good. He's a good rotational piece.
Yep.
And then Joshua Kando with the fourth-round pick, who's been non-existent to this point. Again, after the third round, it's usually just a let's see what happens kind of guy. And I don't know what Kando's going to do. He's a big, physical, strong guy. Played for Florida State, so they usually produce good players out there. But I'm not confident he's ever going to become something. And then they go and they trade multiple picks and swap picks for Frank Clark and then give him $116 million. Yeah. And Frank Clark overall has not panned out outside of a series of 3 games in the playoffs. So that's the thing I'm looking at when it comes to Brett Veach, is how he can reestablish the confidence. And now breaking down all these things and seeing how these young players have already developed. I had somebody on Twitter yesterday saying, well, Brett Veach hasn't drafted any all-pro players yet. Okay, again, this is only going to be his 5th draft, right? And the fact that 2021's draft class has 3 day one contributors and guys that are already one of some of the best players at their positions have all-pro power and potential, or talent and potential. So I don't think it's fair to sit here and say he hasn't drafted all-pro players yet, when the majority of these guys are still in their mid to early 20s, or early to mid-20s, right, becoming the players they are.
L'Jarius Sneed could definitely become one of those
L'Jarius Sneed could definitely be that. Nick Bolton could be that. Creed Humphrey will be.
Willie Gay has a chance.
Creed Humphrey should have been last year. I don't know how he wasn't all-pro last year.
He was snubbed, for sure.
Yeah, baffling. Yeah. Trey Smith has 100% the potential to be an all-pro player.
And honestly, that doesn't matter that much to me. I mean, I think the Pro Bowl and those selections are kind of been it's a cool thing to have a note and something to have on your personal resume as a player. But honestly, if these guys are working as a unit and they're performing, that's all that matters to me. I don't need a bunch of Pro Bowl players and all-pro guys. That doesn't.
And the Chiefs went and signed Austin Reiter last offseason from the Rams. People are thinking, okay, this is the starting center. This guy's really good. He's been awesome in the playoffs. We talked about it on the show.
Yeah.
Chiefs still go and get a center out of Oklahoma. That guy's the starter day one and was the best center in football last year. So you can put the no all-pros out there. The fact is that we had guys. Brett Veach had a mission last offseason to reconfigure that entire offensive line. And he made it an elite offensive line.
Exactly.
With trades, with free agent signings,
youth. I
mean, with draft picks. I mean, look what he did.
Yeah.
Traded for Orlando Brown Jr., signs Joe Tooney in free agency, and then goes and gets himself Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey in one draft. And we're talking from the 2nd round to the 6th round. So we got to give this man some credit here when it comes to the draft, because I think we all feel comfortable with Brett Veach. If we were to hear Brett Veach just made a trade, I think a lot of us are excited, because his trades have usually been good.
He's a gunslinger, man.
Charvarius Ward trade, Orlando Brown Jr. trade. We go down the list. They have worked. Even Frank Clark's the trade worked, because the very next season we win the Super Bowl.
Well, every GM has their sweet spots, their strong points and their weak points. He hasn't been able to find good defensive ends and edge rushers in the draft yet. You know what I mean? That's been a thing he's whiffed on a couple times. He tried to make that his big splash move his first draft. Breeland Speaks he looked the part.
Yeah.
He was a good productive player in college, and he just was a bust. Yeah. There's been, look at, would you rather be busting on defensive players and certain receivers like Cornell Pell so far, Would you rather be whiffing on that or still trying to find a quarterback and whiffing on quarterbacks year in, year out?
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think we're going to be okay. I think we're just kind of in a spoiled mindset, if I'm being honest. We're, like I said, we have the two biggest pieces in place. It's just finding the guys around, and I trust Brett Veach, man.
What I will say in this, though, because I have to stay consistent with my criticisms, because
Yeah.
I don't want to be the guy that just pretends like I'm not critical of
There's no
Brett Veach. I
excuses
am.
right now. This is now or never, man. Right now with all these picks.
What I don't seem to understand just yet is this positive that came out of the Tyreek Hill trade was, well, we got a bunch of picks, which is true, but then it's, well, we also got all this cap space. They got around almost $20 million in cap space. Okay, what's it doing for us?
Yeah.
Where are we going with that?
That's the only question I have.
Yeah, because if we're going to sit here and say that and use that as a positive, it's only a positive if they're using it immediately. Like, I know that there's the idea that next season they're going to go all in and the cap's going to go up league-wide and the Chiefs are going to be big spenders. That's probably going to be true.
Yeah, I mean, Stephon Gilmore.
But this team needs a lot of help right now. I mean, we have Melvin Ingram going to Miami, meeting with the Dolphins. He goes out there and signs a one-year deal up to $3 to $5 million. I'm going to be very upset. And I'm probably getting more upset about that than I should be, because Melvin Ingram isn't a massive difference maker. But with this team being as desperate as they are at pass rush and edge rush, Melvin Ingram is more valuable to this team than he would be to a lot of other teams.
And if he signs there, I mean, Jadeveon Clowney is reported to sign back with the Browns. So, I mean,
the pool's getting even more shallow. It's more and more shallow as the days go on, and I'm more so confused because there are guys out there to be had. Now, the twist I could put all this is maybe it's something that Brett Veach is working towards for a trade, where he's keeping that cap space open, so where he goes and trades for, let's say, a guy like that I want desperately, and Josh Allen from Jacksonville. Let's say they make that trade, and then they extend him, and that's where the money starts to go into, is getting, because you're going to have to sign your draft picks, obviously, and that's going to take up some of that cap space, but not enough, because you're not, first of all, Brett's not using all 12 picks. That is 100% not happening.
Yeah.
Whether they use it to trade up in the first or trade up in the second, I do think one of those two things are going to happen. I do think we're going to see the Chiefs trade up in the first or second. More than likely, I think in the second. Could be wrong, but I think they're going to trade some picks for a current player because they have to. They have to go and get a current edge rusher. I would love to see Josh Allen. We'll see what happens. The relationships are all there, and we've talked about this multiple times on the show. I think that the 12 picks are giving the Chiefs an advantage they've never had before, because now they have a lot of leverage. And the best part is the majority of the teams that are early in the draft, I'm talking the first 10 picks, are horrible franchises, which means they make bad decisions all the time. So the Chiefs can really finagle themselves. We like to use the hashtag fleece by Veach. We could see something like that. And I'm not opposed, and I want to set the record straight here. I'm not opposed to the Chiefs trading up in the top 15. In fact, I would welcome it.
Absolutely.
But what I don't want to see is what a lot of people were suggesting, and I still think it's smoke screens, because our guy Kyle Henning from the Kingdom Set podcast was on just last week and talked about how, people are given source material to put it out there to bait others into trading up, or, trading with the Chiefs or trading ahead of the Chiefs, and it was all smoke screens. But I do think there's validity to it. I do think the Chiefs want to move up that in the 13 to 15 range. What I don't want to see them do is trade a first-round pick and maybe a third-round pick to move up that way and then go get a wide receiver. Because I'm in the minority here that doesn't believe that they need to go up and get a wide receiver early. Because here's the reason why. And I broke this down on Twitter the other day too, and I think this is just as real, as true as anything else that we've talked about on our show over the last couple of weeks when it comes to what they do with this draft. So the current wide receivers in the league right now that were drafted in the second round or later since 2013, let me just give you the most notable names. These are wide receiver ones, elite talent wide receivers. Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, Tyler Lockett, Deebo Samuel, Chris Godwin, A.J. Brown, Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, Allen Robinson, Deontay Johnson, Curtis Samuel. Those are the wide receiver ones. How about some honorable mention guys? Guys that are solid wide receiver twos, or at worst, like great wide receiver threes. Juju Smith-Schuster, T. Higgins, Robert Woods, Tyler Boyd, Jarvis Landry, Kenny Golladay, Michael Gallup, Chase Claypool, Hunter Renfrow, McCole Hardman, Michael Pittman Jr., Darnell Mooney.
That's all second rounders?
The second round or later.
Yeah.
Some of these guys are like Tyreek Hill, 5th round pick. Stephon Diggs, 5th round pick. Like Hunter Renfrow, 5th round pick. Some of these dudes are late-round picks. Robert Woods, same thing. Like, these guys go down the list, man. This is why I'm saying, like, I understand that the Jameson Williams would be awesome to have.
Yeah.
Olave would be awesome to have. But they're not necessities. Because as I'm breaking this down, first of all, the Chiefs have an advantage that most teams don't have. You have a quarterback that is transcendent, which means he's going to elevate the games around the game of every player around him, every wide receiver he has. He's going to elevate those guys. Look what I mean. Byron Pringle just got an $8 million contract. You really think he's getting that with a Ryan Fitzpatrick or a Ryan Tannehill? Or any other Ryan you can think of? No. He got that because he had numbers with Patrick Mahomes and got to shine bright in the postseason.
Would you be upset if we traded up to get a receiver?
Yes, because the biggest reason why is this. You can't sit back and let what you need the most hopefully fall back to you. If the Chiefs aren't out here being big spenders in free agency, that means they need to be big spenders in the draft. That means you need to trade up for something you need.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting here saying
I'd rather
that,
see us trade up to get a defensive line.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If you're not going to make a trade for like a Josh Allen,
the best defensive lineman in the draft.
Yeah, if you're not making a trade for Josh Allen out of Jacksonville, if you're not going out and signing big guys like Chandler Jones, if you're not doing those things, you only have one other option. You got to trade up for a guy that you know in the draft is going to be a badass. Sure, there could be a guy that falls to you at 29 or 30 if you keep one of those picks. But you can't bank on that. What you can bank on is what Brett Veach does all the time. He controls the team's destiny. He puts the destiny of the team's hand in his hands, and he doesn't wait around. So if he's going to be an aggressive GM, and he has a tendency to be aggressive, trading up every single draft, literally since he's been in this the Chiefs GM, he's traded up in every draft within the three rounds. Then do it again.
Yeah.
And if you're going to do it, do not go for wide receiver because there's going to be some guy in the second or third round that you can get that you can turn into a stud. Will they be Jameson Williams? Maybe not. But you don't need Jameson Williams when you have Patrick Mahomes. You know what you do need? Pass rush.
Yep.
Because we don't have it. They were 29th in the league in sacks last season, and they're worse today than they were last year.
Right. And
it's a problem.
That's what I think, too, as a GM and as anybody, like, any fantasy players out there, you go into your fantasy draft, it's the same approach for me is how I would approach it if I was a Brett Veach or a GM. You gotta draft opportunistically instead of idealistically. You know what I mean? You can go into like a draft with an idea of how you want to do it. If this certain guy falls, blah blah blah. But the draft plays out the way it plays out. Say wide receivers just go quick. You got to adjust. If you wanted a receiver in the first round with one of those first two picks, if we don't trade up or trade back. Maybe you do trade back if the receivers are starting to fly off the shelves, and then you try to take the best defensive, edge rusher that's available. So you got to take the opportunistic way of, who's the best player available at certain situations of need. I'm not always for like best player available, period. Definitely best player available at the need that you have the most, especially in the first couple rounds.
Yeah.
We needed a receiver, during that Tyreek Hill situation. So we got McCole, which there's other guys on board we could probably that were a little bit better, but McCole's been a solid player for this team. And it's panned out well. We got a Super Bowl out of that. That's how I think Brett Veach would approach it. I think he's more of an opportunistic guy. He's not just falling in love with names. Even though we have had a cycle of different receivers coming through here, and he's having some visits. All the big names pretty much have had visits with the Chiefs, and I'm sure all those players would love to play with Patrick Mahomes. That'd be a great launching pad for their careers. So I think if a lot of players had choices, they would be playing here. But the draft plays out the way it plays out, and I'm on board with you. I think if we are going to trade up, it better be for an edge rusher. It better be for one of the best guys, if not the best guy in the drafted edge, because we need that more than anything. Patrick Mahomes, and I know we're not excited about this receiver core as it is right now. There's not a lot of sexiness to it, even though I do love Juju. I have a lot of love, and I think a lot of fans are going to fall in love with Juju this year. I think even if this wide receiver core is as is, and we don't draft a receiver till the late second or early third, I think we're fine with that. Yeah. I really do. I think with Travis Kelce being who he is, an elite receiver, not just a tight end, an elite receiver. His numbers are up there with the best wide receivers in this league.
League's all receiving players.
More than Devontae Adams, who just got the biggest money.
Since 2016.
Yeah. So I'm cool with that. And like you just laid out the list of the last few drafts of all the great talent that's come in the second and third rounds and later. You take any of those guys right now.
That was what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Like 20 plus top tier receivers in this league came after the. I'm not sitting here saying you can't. Obviously, the first round you can get tons of DeAndre Hopkins and great guys like that. But on the flip side, You know who else was a first-round pick? In fact, he was a top 5 pick. Sammy Watkins, who's on his 5th team, and he's 28 years old.
Yeah, injury-riddled career. I mean, I love him.
And Jameson Williams is coming off an ACL tear. If we're going to be real, I know that ACL tears aren't as serious and severe as they used to be, but they are still something you have to take note, especially for a speedster. Right. A guy like Jameson Williams who's known to be a guy that burns. So you just I'm not trying to, like, again, the Chiefs were to get Jameson Williams, I'm not going to sit here and be pissed off.
Yeah.
But what I'm looking at is the bigger picture here. If we're not going to be
how we finish the draft,
if you're going to take a conservative approach through free agency and trades, then it makes no sense to take a wide receiver in this because it isn't the biggest need. Is wide receiver a need for this team? Yes. They still need to go and get a guy who is a potential wide receiver one because I think Juju is a top tier wide receiver 2. I don't think Juju's a wide receiver 1. I think he's a solid wide receiver 2, and so therefore I think it's the best bet that the Chiefs, if they're going to be aggressive, which I do anticipate them to be in this draft, it's got to be on the defensive side because there are far more holes on the defensive side than it is on the offensive side. There's no question about it. The Chiefs need help at right tackle. There's no question about that. I know they brought back Andrew Wiley, but I think Andrew Wiley is more of a rotational swing backup type of tackle. I don't think he's a guy that you build your right tackle position around.
Well, he's got the trust of Patrick Mahomes.
And I know that Lucas Niang will be back eventually, but Lucas Niang can't stay healthy. He's had hip problems. Now he's got a serious knee issue. He has a patellar tendon tore this last year. That's going to take a long time.
I like that kid, man.
Yeah, I do too. And you guys know I'm Niang gang here. I'm Niang gang, but the Chiefs need to upgrade at right tackle, and I think they'll do that in the draft at some point. We're actually, the week before the draft, we're going to give you guys, we're going to do a whole draft special. We'll hopefully have some people on here that actually know what the fuck they're talking about when it comes to the draft. We're going to try to get Binkley on. I talked to Bink yesterday. We're going to see if he has some availability, because he's the dude that I think he's already got 3 or 4 mock drafts
busy
out.
Man.
Yeah, he's got some great draft pick stuff. Our guys, Kingdom Says podcast, know what they're talking about with Arrowhead Tom and those guys. Maybe we can snag one of them as well and see what they got going on. But that's where I stand on it. I think without question, you got to get better at edge rush if you want this team to contend in this stacked AFC as currently presented. The team's got upgrades they need at defense, a lot of positions, cornerback, safety. Even though they went and signed Justin Reed, I do think they can upgrade at safety because this is Juan Thornhill's last year under his contract as well, and I don't know if the Chiefs are going to sign him back or not. So there's a lot of added depth. But Trevor, you did mention a guy named Mecole Hardman that I also want to defend real quick before we have our guy Shaggy Shane on just in a few minutes. So I tell Trevor this all the time, and I promise you guys I try to work at it, but I listen to way too much radio. I watch way too many sports shows. I have a problem. It's an obsession. I will admit it. Any day of the week, I have a problem because I am obsessed with listening to other people's opinions. I love hearing other people's opinions on things that I care about. But I also love sharing my opinion because I'm an outspoken person, and we've had this show now for over 3 years, and I think that we have a good thing going here where I can express my opinions while also hearing other people's opinions. Well, there's one opinion out there that I've absolutely despised, and I've had my issues with Mecole Hardman and some of the things that he's done on the field and how he looks lost at times, and his route tree doesn't really hold high and hold true. But I heard people on local radio this week talking about Mecole Hardman's dedication or seriousness about getting better and getting more in line with Patrick Mahomes' quarterback. There's been this narrative that's been out there that Mecole Hardman doesn't practice with Patrick Mahomes in the offseason, therefore he must not take it very seriously. Well, I don't know if you guys know this. Mecole Hardman now is currently the longest tenured wide receiver on the Chiefs team, and he's 24 years old. He's going into his 5th year with the Chiefs, his final year of his contract, and what do you know? We heard that Mecole Hardman was working out with Patrick Mahomes this last week because we heard everyone talking about, well, they got Juju out there and they got, even Clyde Edwards-Helaire out there and we got MVS and these other young wide receivers. Cornell Powell's been practicing with Patrick Mahomes. Why won't Mecole do it? Why isn't he out there? Well, then we see the videos on Instagram and Twitter of Mecole Hardman catching passes. In fact, not just Mecole Hardman, Travis Kelce was out there. And neither one of those guys need to be out there because they know the offense. They're familiarized with Patrick Mahomes. They have chemistry with Patrick Mahomes. They don't need to technically be out there on March and April practices. But Mecole was. And I thought it was so damn hilarious that the people that are calling him out had that blow up in their face the same exact day they were doing that out on their platforms. And so what I wanted to do was create a defense for McCole Hardman going into this next season, because although I still believe McCole Hardman has a long way to go to become what we would call a great wide receiver 2 or ever a wide receiver 1, I'm going to make some defenses for him as to why he's been an awesome player for the Chiefs over the last 4 years. So we all know that durability is a big thing in football. The greatest ability is availability, as they like to say in sports, which is 100% true. Well, since McCole Hardman got drafted, there have been 49 regular season games played. McCole Hardman has played in all 49 games. The Chiefs have played in 9 playoff games since 2019. McCole Hardman has been active in all 9 playoff games. So that shows you his body. He takes his body and durability very seriously, despite being an undersized player at 5'10", 187 pounds. Since 2019, McCole Hardman has more all-purpose yards than Chris Godwin, Deebo Samuel, Mike Evans, Deontay Johnson, DK Metcalf, Amari Cooper, DeAndre Hopkins, Terry McLaurin, A.J. Brown, Mike Williams, Brandon Cooks, and Tyler Boyd. Since 2019, McCole Hardman has more receiving touchdowns than Deebo Samuel, Jarvis Landry, Cole Beasley, Julio Jones, and is tied with Michael Gallup, OBJ, Robert Woods, and DJ Moore. There were 4 wide receivers taken in the 2019 draft before McCole Hardman: Marquise Brown, N'Keal Harry, Deebo Samuel, and A.J. Brown. McCole is 3rd in receptions and 1st in all-purpose yards amongst those 5 receivers. McCole Hardman has 58 games played, 146 receptions, 3,627 all-purpose yards with 17 total touchdowns. That's behind Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins in 2019 and partial 2020. So at best, McCole has produced at this level as a 3rd and 4th option. McCole is entering his final year of his rookie contract. Tyreek Hill is gone. Sammy Watkins has been gone. And despite how much he has produced so far, we still have folks caught up on not him being at a March practice with Patrick Mahomes. McCole, this is my challenge to you, man. It's time for you to silence the critics, because they're still out there. They're still doubting you. They still think that you have your limitations. You can't do what you've set out to do. It's time for you to silence them. Trevor, what are your thoughts on McCole Hardman? And now that you know these numbers, where do you balance your take on McCole Hardman right now?
I mean, when you take a step back and you look at all those numbers, it definitely looks like, he's right up there with those guys. Like, I don't think he's as good as a lot of those guys, but on a weekly basis, I would say. But I think McCole's been a good contributor. And listen, having those numbers behind sharing the ball with Tyreek and Travis Kelce throughout his career, that's impressive. He hasn't had the opportunities a lot of these guys have had, and he's still having better numbers, from start to finish of their career so far. So you can't take that away from him. I think this is his biggest chance to make a name for himself amongst his league. I mean, most people know who he is, just being the vertical threat and the speedster that he is. But I think there's possibly more to his game than we know. This is the biggest opportunity he's going to have to showcase that. I've always been rocky with him, up and down with him a little bit. Kind of in the moment with him and what he is and what he can provide to this offense. I don't think he's ever going to be like a true number 1 guy, but I think he's good at what and I think last year was my most year I was impressed with him. He really stepped it up, and I feel like even Andy Reid has said it towards the end of the year. McCole, the last few weeks of that season, kind of really fell into place in what he is and really found his place on a football team, especially with Patrick Mahomes. And I think he started to build that trust with Patrick Mahomes, because there was a long time there where him and Patrick Mahomes were just not on the same page, whether it was his fault or Patrick's fault. The communication was just broken there a lot of times. Wrong routes, wrong throw, bad judgment on Patrick Mahomes' part. Just a bad route ran by McCole. There was things he needed to work out. As far as routes ran and things like that. So I think he has potential. I think this has got to be his biggest year. I mean, he's got the most opportunity to make something of it with the vacancy there of Tyreek Hill. Listen, man, I like McCole. I like him as a person. I like him in this offense. He fits this offense very well. He's very fast. He's good. He's good at stretching the field. He's good with the ball in his hands. As far as yak goes, he's a home run hitter. He always has been. But I want to see him do some of the more of the easy things, some more of the the non-sexy things. We all know he's got that sexiness to his game. I want to see him kind of do some of the non-sexy stuff, kind of how Albert Wilson was. Just a tough, gritty, move the sticks kind of guy at times, but he also can break it open.
Yeah.
Having guys like that is vital for Hall of Fame talent quarterbacks. They need those guys that are reliable. Honestly, if he's on the same page with Patrick Mahomes, he's going to have numbers.
Yeah.
And there's been a long time duration of his career where he was on the same page as Patrick Mahomes. He's got better numbers than Debo and all these guys. That says something.
Yeah.
That also says something to the potency of this offense. Our third, fourth option sometimes is having better numbers than a lot of people's number one option.
Yeah.
That's saying something. So I think this is his best opportunity moving forward. And, I'm excited to see what McCole can do this year.
And I love the evolution of what McCole Hardman's career has been to this point. Because of the fact, and again, it's his fourth year, not his fifth year, I apologize. His fourth year because he wasn't a first-round pick. The evolution of what McCole's career has been to this point. So in the first season, he was basically just a deep shot, go get it kind of guy because the Chiefs already had Tyreek, Travis Kelce, and Sammy Watkins. So the first year was, okay, if he's deep and he can – I remember I was going to every Chiefs game at home. It was a deep shot every time where McCole really wasn't doing much, maybe a jet sweep here and there.
Yeah. Which
is why, ironically, his first season he had the most touchdowns in his career that year with 6. But he also had his career low in receptions and career low in yards. But his career high in yards per reception was the highest at 21 yards per catch. But in the year 2, his receptions went up 15, his yards went up, but his touchdowns went down 2. But his yards average went from 21 to 14. And then in year 3, he became more of a prolific player in this offense, having 59 receptions for almost 700 yards, only 2 touchdowns, and his yards went down. So you think about that, you're not thinking that's a negative thing, right? You're like, well, it should be a negative thing that his yards are going down per reception. But that also means he's getting more targets and more opportunities to do things in space in the middle of the field. Right. He's not just becoming that one-trick pony to just, deep shot, jet sweep. No.
Yeah.
He's starting to get into routes more. Because you saw Tyreek's numbers, his yards per average were going down too as he became more of a possession receiver last year. So now, you got to think about it. We've never seen uncorked McCole. Mm-hmm. We've never seen it to where he's a prolific part of the offense. Could it be a bad thing? Could it end up blowing up in the Chiefs' face? Yeah.
I mean, he was drafted to be as such.
But he was drafted to be that. And I think in year 4, we've seen other wide receivers throughout time. Takes 3, 4, 5 years. And I don't mean to put McCole in the same category as some of these guys, but it took guys like Chris Carter and Michael Irvin and guys like that 3 to 4 years to really become that. Really become who they were. Terrell Owens, same thing. So that's kind of where I'm at on it with McCole Hardman. I understand that there is justification for some of the criticism, but I think that we need to give him an opportunity to shine in this offense.
This is the year.
When it's finally him and an opportunity to be something that is of absolute importance and doesn't have guys like Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins overcoming him. We are very, very excited. Because, and I just unplugged my headset there, so I'm not going to be able to hear anything for the time being. It's right there, Trevor, yeah. So we are very excited because we have a guy that I respect greatly. I go to him for a lot of things. We talk damn near every single day about whatever, but it's a lot of times it's about football. Because this man knows what he's talking about. And he hit me up this week. He's like, listen, man, I need to get on the show. We need to talk. We have a lot of things to talk about, as we do every single time. But let's not waste any more of that time because he needs to rant, and I can't wait to hear what Shaggy has to say. Got some questions for him, but nevertheless, let's give it up for our guy, Shaggy Shay Williams.
Thank you for that introduction, brother. How you doing? How you doing, Trevor? How you guys
What's
doing?
Going on, man?
We're doing great, brother. We're glad you're here.
Hey, Lance, 5 years ago, you came over to the plush studios of Shaggy Shane Entertainment for the very first time, and you and I both were out on an island, and we demanded that Chiefs Kingdom draft a quarterback in the first round. The rest is Kingdom history, brother, and I'll never forget that because It's something that we celebrated 5 days later on April 27th, 2017, when the Kansas City Chiefs traded up 17 spots in the draft and took Patrick LaVon Mahomes II. It was a beautiful moment. We celebrated as if we won the Super Bowl because we knew once he got on the field, it was going to be magic. The rest is, as I said, is history. This draft coming up in 12 days is just as paramount as it was 5 years ago. With the plethora of draft picks, with the defense, let's be honest, guys, with the defense in limbo. And it's not the good limbo. It's the limbo teetering on falling. Because last year, when the Chiefs traded for Melvin Ingram on November 2nd, the Chiefs had just won Monday night game against a bad New York Giants team. It was an ugly win to go to 4-4. At the time, the Chiefs were 30th in defense and in dead last in the AFC West. Melvin Ingram alone changed the landscape of the Chiefs' defense for the 2021 season and was the spark that led the Chiefs to the AFC Championship game. True, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, they were still great. But if the Chiefs don't make that trade for Melvin Ingram, then I don't think we're a playoff team last year. But we can delve into that. We can expand on that, and we will talk about the draft coming up, Lance. I'm honored to be on your show, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. We're glad to have you because this is the perfect time to have you on because this offseason has been rather unique, Shane, and you and I have talked throughout it. We've given our opinions. Well, I know we both didn't like the Tyreek trade initially, and then we heard that there were other things, other factors involved that we didn't really know at the beginning, that Tyreek wanted to be closer to home. He wanted to get that record-breaking money, and the Chiefs understood and respected that and got him out of here. So now we look at the Chiefs and we say, okay, well, they got 5 draft picks out of him. He's a non-quarterback, so that's almost unforeseen, almost unprecedented to get that many draft picks out of a non-quarterback. But also they got a ton of cap space in return. They got around 18 to 20 million in cap space available. And that excited me because I knew there were possibilities, there were things that the Chiefs can go and do to spend that money. But they haven't done that to this point, which leads me to believe that, because I can't believe the Chiefs are going to continue to be this conservative all the way into the draft. I know they got to sign their draft picks, but I have to think there's some sort of trade coming. We know last year that the Chiefs are going to do something. They traded for Orlando Brown Jr. They went and signed Joe Thuney, spent money. Well, there's a lot of money to be spent, and they haven't done it yet. So I have to believe that the Chiefs have something out there, a plan, something up their sleeve to get somebody that can contribute day one and make an absolute difference and be a difference maker. If you were to guess right now, Shane, how do you think the Chiefs are going to spend that cap money to make this offense or this defense or this team as a whole improve that much more?
Defense. It has to be defense. You know, the topic I talked about when I posted on the Spoken yesterday on Twitter and Facebook, and let's be honest, guys. When Andy Reid took over the Kansas City Chiefs 9 years ago, he had a great defense. Now, people might be saying, oh, come on, Shaggy. The Chiefs were 2-14, had the first overall draft in the 2013 draft. There wasn't any talent on the 2013 team. And Andy Reid took over a defense that was still playing at a high level. He had Tom Hawley on the outside. He had Justin Houston on the other outside. He had Dontari Poe, which was a number 1 draft pick, going into his second season. He had Derek Johnson in the middle playing at a high level. He had the great Eric Berry at safety. He had Brandon Flowers at the other corner, and he picked up cornerback Sean Smith on the other side. That defense, that team, and let's not forget Jamal Charles was on offense as the running back. When Andy Reid took over that team, all that team needed was Andy Reid. Where the team is now, let's fast forward to 9 years, because we can't get in a time machine. I wish we could. I wish we could go get in a time machine and go back to 2013 and bring that entire defense with Bob Sutton, yes, even Bob Sutton at that for that year, and play this year. But we can't do that. So now with the Chiefs, let's be honest, that this defense going into this draft is the worst it's ever looked under Andy Reid. It sucks to say it. John Dorsey tried to keep it going, to add depth, In 2014, he drafted D Ford in the first round to add depth for Tamba Hali and Justin Houston. That was nice. D Ford showed promise for a good 3-year span, but never quite developed. In 2015, the number 1 draft pick was Marcus Peters. That was good. He showed massive promise, but they couldn't sustain it for a plethora of reasons that we don't need to touch on right now. So there were times in the last 9 years where the Chiefs tried to add depth to this team to eventually take over for Tamba Hali, to eventually take over for Brandon Flowers and the rest of the cornerbacks. But now that the Chiefs sit here now with so many draft picks in the first 3 rounds, it is paramount that the Chiefs rebuild the defense the same way that Andy Reid had it when he took over in 2013. Now, I know it can't happen in one draft, regardless of how many draft picks you're going to get. The Chiefs aren't going to get a Tamba Hali, Justin Houston, Eric Berry, Derek Johnson, Marcus Peters. You're not going to get all these guys in this year's draft, but it's a massive start. You got a plethora of picks, which I will get to the guys I want to draft here in just a minute. But it is paramount that the Chiefs address the defense, because it was only Melvin Ingram that turned the Chiefs defense around. I sat here with you guys on Halloween weekend and it was dark. Tyrann Mathieu was trolling Chiefs fans on Twitter and Instagram. We were 3-4, dead last. We had the 30th ranked defense. We were dead last in the division. This defense needs some serious rebuilding, and I hope and pray some way that Brett Veach at least entertains the thought of bringing Melvin Ingram back, because of the solid veteran leadership that he brought to the team last year and can bring to the team this upcoming season. It is paramount that we bring, in my opinion, Melvin Ingram back just to have that, because Frank Clark is going to serve some sort of suspension from last year. At least there's that talk that he might be suspended for those gun charges that he went through last June. So while we will contemplate what the Chiefs are going to do in the draft, like I said, I'll get to the players that I think that the Chiefs should draft early. There's still that concern with Frank Clark if he's going to be suspended or not. But this defense needs serious work. Yes, I love Nick Bolton. I love Willie Gay. I love Lord Jerry Sneed. Those guys are the foundation for this team. But for pass rush and the rest of the defensive line, and I didn't forget about Chris Jones, this defense needs help, and help that can be addressed in this year's draft.
Well, I'm definitely excited to find out who these players are, and I would have to believe that these are guys that are difference makers, that Brett Veach is going to be able to identify them. And the biggest reason why is what I started the show off with today about a defense based upon the metrics of what Brett Veach has done in the draft. I know that first impressions matter across the board in life, sports, everything. And his first pick as the Chiefs GM was Breeland Speaks, and that obviously was a terrible pick in hindsight. But we also know something about Brett Veach, is that he was the guy that told John Dorsey and Andy Reid, hey, Patrick Mahomes is the guy you need to get. And I believe, and I told Trevor this just a few minutes ago, that I know that John Dorsey was the one that ultimately pulled the trigger, and we give him credit for that because he did. But not only was it because of Brett Veach, the Chiefs knowing that Patrick is that guy, but I believe that if they would have fired John Dorsey a month before the draft and Brett Veach steps in, the Chiefs are still 100% drafting Patrick Mahomes. So the credit still lies in part and in a large part to Brett Veach and his homework and his recruiting and his talent assessments. So knowing what he's done, knowing that there are 8 current starters on this team that Brett Veach has drafted, along with the guys like Joe Tooney that he brought in as a free agent, trading for Orlando Brown Jr., trading for Frank Clark, going against Tyrann Mathieu in free agency, who's now no longer with the team but was a huge contributor over the last 3 years. I think it's time that we give Brett Veach, although we might critique and criticize some of the decisions he has made in the past, I think he is showing us a trajectory with his talent evaluation across the board in the draft, free agency, and in trades. This man knows what he's doing, and he's going to identify the right pieces to get them in place and help them start and be one-day contributors for the Chiefs moving forward.
Exactly. Brett Veach was the man behind it. And Pat Mahomes Sr. has told us, numerous times that we've seen him off camera, Brett Veach was the man going down there. Brett Veach was the man going down to Tech for 2 years. Him and Matt Nagy both were both were jamming film into Andy Reid's office, making sure that he peeped it out. So definitely you give Brett Veach massive credit. Even if he did take over before the 2017 draft, yes, the Chiefs would have done whatever possible to get Patrick Mahomes. That was without question. And where, he has missed. And I think missing on Breland Speaks, I won't say that it scarred Brett Veach, but it did show some hesitancy from what he did the next season when he just said, I'm not going to try to get an outside linebacker or a defensive end or edge rusher. I'm just going to trade my picks for Frank Clark. It worked. We got a Super Bowl. But where the Chiefs have missed in drafting edge rushers, where they missed at drafting Breland Speaks in the second round, that hurt us for now. And the year before, in the second round, the Chiefs, John Dorsey, his last draft as the Chief, in the second round, he took Tano Passanio, a developmental defensive end. And he could have drafted Alvin Kamara or Juju Smith-Schuster, but he took Tano Passanio, where the Chiefs missed in the second round at drafting defensive end. And you can even critique or debate with Justin Kane, though, last year's fourth-round draft pick. Are these developmental pass rushers ever going to develop? Does Brett Veach trust himself to think, okay, I can trust Spags into doing something with Tano Passanio? He's gone. Okay, Speaks is going into his second year. He's with Spagnuolo as the defensive coordinator. Can he do something? No. Justin Kane, though, he was thrown out on the field week one when you and I and Clay Windler from Red Tribe Cinema were at the home opener, the very first game of the season, and he was on a play where Nick Chubb just ran 22 yards right by him for a touchdown. And I looked at Clay, who was sitting to my right, and I said, Justin Kane, though, just got right out of the way. And Clay Windler turned to me and he said, yep, bad gap discipline. Well, bad gap discipline is going to show when you're a fourth-round draft pick and you're starting week one as a rookie. So the Chiefs need to hit. The Chiefs hurt at missing on the second-round edge rusher and Tano Passanio, Breland Speaks. The jury's still out on Joshua Kane, though, fourth-round draft pick out of Florida State last year. But seeing the trend from Tano and Breland Speaks, I don't really trust it. And I don't know if Brett Veach trusts it either. And I hope, and like I said, I'll mention these gentlemen that I feel the Chiefs should go after to address the defensive issues. That's just how I feel. But I trust Brett Veach to make the necessary, even though he's missed on edge rushers in the draft. I'm not critical of it, but it's just something that I feel needs to be discussed. And I'm sure Brett Veach understands critiquing and discussing his drafting of edge rushers as well.
Well, I'm on pins and needles here. I got to hear these names. Shane, who do you think the Chiefs need to come and bring them in and be the guys to help us? Because I'm waiting, man. I'm here biting my fingernails.
Okay, here's the deal. Everybody wants to trade this, that, and the other for draft picks. Trade up for wide receivers. Let's stay home. Let's stay at 29 and 30 with the 2 first-round picks, and let's stay with the 2 second-round picks. You can revamp your defense. With the 29th pick, I got the Chiefs taking Boye Mafe, defensive end out of Minnesota. The kid's freaking raw. He's not raw. He's definitely an upgrade over Tano Passanio and Breland Speaks. He's got a good motor. He can get after it. With the second pick, follow me here, of the first round, the Chiefs should take outside linebacker Nakobe Dean out of Georgia. The kid is a freaking winner. He's hungry. He's got a strong motor. You may say outside linebacker. We already have Willie Gay and Nick Bolton. You get Nakobe Dean with the second pick of the first round. You can re-sign Melvin Ingram. Nakobe Dean can freaking take the place of Anthony Hitchens, and you will have a freaking monster defense a monster middle linebacker set that I would put on paper to put with the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, all Sherman Singleton, Shelton Quarles, and the Hall of Famer himself, Derek Brooks. I love Nakobe Dean out of Georgia and Boye Mafe with the first round. Go look up those 2 gentlemen. And in the second round, you get your cornerback, Jalen Armour out of Alabama. The kid's got a good size. He's a stud corner. And with the second one, get another corner. Get Martin Martin Emerson out of Mississippi State. The kid's another corner. You could get a great defense, bring back Melvin Ingram, 2 solid cornerbacks in just the first 2 rounds alone. You can address wide receiver in the 3rd round and 4th because you got those picks. You can make it happen. I hope and pray that the Chiefs defense or the Chiefs go that way to address their defense because we need those picks to play and stay. We were blessed. Think about it, guys. We were blessed that we had Justin Houston just for 8 solid seasons. We were blessed to have Tom Bahali for 16 seasons. We were blessed to have Derek Johnson play for 17 seasons. These guys played for us for such a long time, and they played at a level to where we didn't draft for their replacements per se early. I know it'd be a dream scenario to have anybody come in and play at such a high level like Tom Bahali, Derek Johnson, Justin Houston, but the defense where it stands in 2022 needs to be addressed. And if you address it with those 4 players on defense, stay where you're at. You can get your wide receivers later. You can make it happen with rebuilding the defense. There's nothing wrong with rebuilding the defense. It's bare. The shelves are bare on the defense, guys. We love Patrick Mahomes. We love the highlight. And I understand everybody wants Jameson Williams. I understand people want George Pickens at wide receiver. Those guys are great. But we got to remember, has Patrick Mahomes, has he dropped off with the plays of all the safeties playing back? There's still some concern. Is Patrick Mahomes the greatest quarterback in the NFL right now? Yes. But there's still some concern of, well, if they drop all the safeties back, has Patrick Mahomes figured out how to beat that scheme? I think he's going to use this off season to get better at that, but we need defense. Patrick Mahomes, Matt Nagy is back, so Patrick Mahomes will get better. Not to say that he really fell off, but we got to be honest about the AFC Championship game. But let's rebuild the defense, and we'll go on from there.
I like it. I like it, Shane. I think that makes a ton of sense. I do know who those players are, and they would be awesome players to add to this defense. And I think that you and I share a very similar mentality of how we believe the Chiefs utilize this draft. Because if you look at not just the draft last year, but also in free agency and trades, Brett Veach went and overcorrected on the offensive line. And we talked about this. I said this back on my Twitter account last year that the Chiefs need to give Patrick Mahomes as close to that 2003 offensive line as possible when they had Willie Shields and Willie Rofe and Casey Wigman and all those guys. And they did it. That's about as close as you can make it. So on the flip side, you bring up the 2013 defense, which I think finished 7th in overall defense that year. They had prolific stars across the board at all 3 levels. That's how you do it. That's how you make the best team. I know that there is this obsession to go and trade up and get a Jameson Williams or an Olave or somebody like that at the wide receiver position, but that's just an obsession and a fascination. That's not, to me, reality. The best way to get this team back into the Super Bowl is to give Patrick Mahomes a defense he can rely on and trust in, that he doesn't feel that pressure that he has to take those big, huge, ridiculous shots every single time, because that was one of the biggest reasons they struggled in the first 2 months of the season last season, as he didn't have that trust in the defense. They figured it out as the season went on, but we don't need to see that happen again. They don't need to do that because, unfortunately, they won't have the luxury of having an AFC that wasn't as great as it should be this next upcoming season, which is what I want to segue into when it comes to the remaining portions of the AFC outside of Kansas City. I am obsessed with talking about this because I think that although the AFC has gotten significantly stronger, and it is without question the better conference at this point, I do think that there is a little bit of hyperbolic overreaction to some of these acquisitions that these teams in the AFC West and the AFC as a whole have made. In particular, the Bills going and spending $53 million guaranteed on a 33-year-old Von Miller. The Chargers going and spending or getting all $64 million guaranteed dollars left in Khalil Mack's contract, a 32-year-old pass rusher who's had foot surgery. They're bringing him in. I think there's some moves, even with Russell Wilson, who we all know is a great quarterback, has been great, but is 34 years old. He is undersized. He had massive surgery on his throwing finger. He's been sacked over 500 times in his career. I think that there's a little more context in what people are willing to put out there when it comes to some of these aging veterans that these AFC contenders or people think that are contenders are putting on their roster and just assuming that they're going to jump the Chiefs now because of these acquisitions. What do you think of the AFC landscape as a whole right now, and in particular, some of these AFC West moves? Do you think that they have closed the gap on the Chiefs, or do you think they've leapfrogged the Chiefs already?
They've definitely closed the gap. We got to respect it until they come to San Diego, the Raiders or the Broncos, and San Diego, LA Chargers. Go to LA Chargers and collapse, the Broncos and collapse, and the Raiders and collapse. You got to give it to them because on paper, that's what we're going by now. The Chiefs, when you win the division 6 years in a row and you go to the playoffs 7 years in a row, there's going to be some, okay, what can we have to do? Are they desperate measures? Yes, but they needed to do it. I hope that the Chiefs have done enough. The Chiefs have done enough on offense to definitely hold back Khalil Mack. The Chiefs have done enough. I mean, I'm wearing a Creed Humphrey jersey right now just because Brett Beach killed the draft last year. The Chiefs need to kill the draft this year on defense to stop the Raiders' new offense. Yes, they still got Derek Carr, who's adequate at best, but they still have weapons. Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos is the biggest concern because he's good. As he fell off, was he injured last year? My daughter's in Seattle, so she's been telling me there's been some injury problems with him. The fans are unhappy to lose him, but they felt like it was the right time to trade him. So they feel that he might be getting just past his prime. We'll have to see, because when I saw Seattle play and when I saw Russell Wilson play still at a high level, but I'm not in Seattle, and I don't watch all their games. I know you have stats to go by, but we will have to see. I think that Denver is tired of losing to us. They lost 13 times in a row to us, so they went deep and got their quarterback. So I definitely am concerned. Do I think they leapfrogged us? No, because until they do, I'm not going to say they have. So the Chiefs are the team to beat. We're the big guy on campus. I think Vegas even has us at the still top 5 or 6 to go to the Super Bowl. Is that what it is, Lance? Do you know the specifics?
I think the Chiefs right now have the third best odds.
Okay, yeah. So they're still in the mix because of Patrick Mahomes, because of Andy Reid. But I definitely respect, you have to, what the rest of the AFC has done to compete with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, and then you look at the other two teams. I know we addressed the Broncos with Russell Wilson. My biggest issue with the Broncos, just for the record here, is I do believe that Russell Wilson makes them a better team just by being there. He's a top 10 quarterback still. He's still got plenty of opportunity to be great. I think he's not an old quarterback, but when you factor in his size and how many times he's been sacked and coming off his first real injury of his career, and it happens to be on his throwing hand, I think that does deserve some attention. Also with the Broncos, everyone talks about all these weapons they have. Maybe I'm the only one, but I don't see anybody outside of Javonte Williams, who, by the way, was a rookie last season, that is a proven commodity. Sure, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, they're talented young players, but they haven't done anything to this point of their careers that makes me think they're proven that, oh my God, you got to watch out for these guys. I have to see it to believe it. And that goes across the board in the AFC West. Because when it comes to the Raiders, they just signed this big lucrative deal with the Derek Carr situation. They gave him basically $40 million a year. They can get out of it each and every year. But they did give him over $120 million for a guy who's never won a playoff game, played in one, and he threw an interception to end the game. Devontae Adams, $28 million a year for a 30-year-old wide receiver. I can't imagine that's going to bode well when he's going from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr. I don't think his production is going to match. They're spending a lot of money on guys that we don't know for sure are franchise cornerstones. And when it comes to the Chargers, maybe I'm tripping here, but I thought for like the last 5-6 years, the Chargers were penciled in to win the AFC West, win the AFC Championship, get to the Super Bowl. And every single year they fall short. And 2 of those years have been Justin Herbert, a guy that people think is an elite quarterback already. Yet they're 15-17 with him, have not made the playoffs yet, and they have Brandon Staley as their head coach. And if you look at the AFC West right now, in my opinion, the Chiefs have the 3 best head coaches in the division, with Andy Reid, Matt Nagy, and Eric Bieniemy. Because Brandon Staley is unproven. Josh McDaniels is 11-17 and drafted Tim Tebow in the first round, his first tenure, and left the Colts on red. And then we have Nathaniel Hackett in Denver that has never even called plays as an offensive coordinator and had Aaron Rodgers, which makes you look a lot better. Ask Mike McCarthy. So the AFC West has gotten better. The AFC has gotten better. But to me, there are so many missing key pieces to these teams that I'm not going to sit here and just pencil these teams in to leapfrog the Chiefs, make the playoffs, make big runs, because they got to show it to me, because these guys have a lot more to overcome than I think the Chiefs do. So when it comes to the Chargers, when it comes to the Raiders, what are you seeing right now? Do you think these guys are legitimate threats to the AFC West and the AFC as a whole?
Chargers more than the Raiders. First off, when they predict the Chargers to win the division every single year for the last 20 years, it's because NFL Network is right across the street from their new stadium. So they're always going to be like, hey, let's go to work and predict the Chargers to go to the Super Bowl. Let's do it. But Brandon Staley, if he doesn't go for it on fourth down nearly every dang time last year, he probably wins that the final game against the Raiders, and they go to the playoffs. Justin Herbert, you have to respect him. He still has weapons. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are studs. They still got that stud safety and Darwin James, I do believe is his name. So they're going to be definitely in the mix. So I think you have to be careful of the hype they do get, but damn it, I respect Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, got a couple more questions here for you, Shane. We're going to let you out, man, because we do appreciate your time big time. When it comes to, I don't know if you read the article yet from Sam McDowell from the Star when it came to Tyrann Mathieu and his conversation with him and breaking down everything from Tyrann Mathieu's childhood until right now, as he's still currently sitting as a free agent in the NFL, which is something I did not foresee. I thought he was going to be here in Kansas City for at least a couple more years. We obviously saw that the Chiefs wanted to move on, signed Justin Reed, and then Tyrann Mathieu comes out and says that he more than likely would have signed that contract that the Chiefs gave Justin Reed, which is essentially 3 years, $30 million. I don't believe that. I don't believe that Tyrann Mathieu's a liar, but I think revisionist history and trying to make himself feel and look better, I think he's saying that to make it look like, oh, he would have played for, pennies on the dollar. I don't believe that. I think Tyrann Mathieu wanted big money, didn't get it, and now is sitting here looking at the market, which is essentially dried up. There's been, I think, 10 safeties signed this offseason, and he's not one of them. If you could just give us a synopsis of, or just a diatribe, rather, of what you took from the Tyrann Mathieu era. What do you think, what the future holds for Tyrann Mathieu moving forward, and just your overall thoughts on Tyrann Mathieu as a person and as a player?
Tyrann Mathieu had to come to a team that was ready to go to the Super Bowl. And you know what? Tyrann Mathieu helped get it done. That was the perfect replacement, short-term replacement for Eric Berry. Eric Berry was the heart and soul of this defense, played at a high level until his body fell apart in 2017. So Tyrann Mathieu had big shoes to fill, and he came here and he filled it in that brief 2-3 year window. He came here, it was a perfect piece. Spagnuolo needed a safety to take over for Eric Berry, perfect replacement. And along with Frank Clark, that defense, they caught lightning in a bottle. It took them mid-October 2019 to get it together. They got it together. Tyrann Mathieu brought us a Super Bowl championship, and I will forever be grateful for that. The last 4 years, I know you want me to talk Tyrann, but the last 4 years of Chiefs football, which includes Tyrann, we should all be grateful for what Tyrann Mathieu has done. Anybody who's not grateful for what not only the Chiefs have done the last 4 years or Tyrann Mathieu, then you're just glutton for punishment. You're just a not happy person. So everything Tyrann Mathieu has done the last 3 years with the Chiefs and the Chiefs 4 years, in the last 4 years, has been great. But it's time to move on. And I think Brett Veach, I'm hoping and praying, wants to revamp this defense with these draft picks. And I think Tyrann Mathieu should be applauded for what he's brought to the team. But it's time to move on, and it's time to rebuild the defense. But thank you, Tyrann Mathieu, for what you've done with the Kansas City Chiefs for 3 seasons. Definitely needed it.
Well, final question here for you, and I know this is a guy that you are a big fan of, and he just signed with his 5th team. Mr. Sammy Watkins signed a one-year deal with the Green Bay Packers, a team that is very desperate to get some wide receiver help. We're hoping for the best for Sammy. We're hoping the best for the Packers to get that little union between him and Aaron Rodgers going. That'd be a fun conversation to have. Could you imagine Aaron Rodgers and Sammy Watkins having a live conversation? That'd be interesting. But I want to get your thoughts on Sammy Watkins signing with the Green Bay Packers.
Gosh, I'm not the only one who says this. If he stays healthy, he'll click. He's a good dude. Like that one time I met him and got my picture taken with him. He said he wanted to stay to Kansas City. He said his kids love Kansas City. It seems like everybody says that, don't they? But it didn't work out. He's got to stay healthy. We knew last year when he was going to Baltimore that he wasn't going to get the stats in the games that he played with Lamar Jackson because Lamar Jackson doesn't throw. He's not the passing quarterback that Patrick Mahomes is. And Tyreek Hill's not going to get the same stats that he's got from Tua Tagovailoa because Tyreek Hill doesn't have Patrick Mahomes. Now, specifically to Sammy Watkins, if, in capital letters, quotations, he stays healthy, he will be productive. He was productive with the Chiefs. Sammy Watkins was productive with the Chiefs. Before 2019, in a 2-year span, in 2018, before 2020, in 2018 and 2019, those postseasons, he was the most prolific wide receiver in Kansas City Chiefs postseason history before we went back to the playoffs in 2020 and went to the Super Bowl against Tampa. But he showed, hey, in January, if I'm healthy and you're a good quarterback, I'm going to get the ball going into the postseason. So he was definitely, man, I wish him the best of luck. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Shaggy, let the people know where they can find your show, where they can find you, and how to communicate with you, man.
Well, first, I got a couple questions for you both because
Go ahead.
You guys, I watch you guys weekly, and I listen to the rest of at least as much as I can. I got a question that I feel Chiefs off-season workouts start Monday at Arrowhead Stadium. So the Chiefs are going to be back in the news. They're going to be back in the talk. We're going to see reports. We're going to see the media talk to the Chiefs as they come to work out. We're not specifically who's going to show up and who isn't, but we hope the players show up. Like I said, if the last 4 years have been great, but if you go back 5 years, the Kansas City Chiefs in Andy Reid's era have lost 2 home playoff games where they were up 21-3. One with Alex Smith and one with Patrick Mahomes. I know we're trying to forget about it, but I hope if Patrick Mahomes is interviewed this week, the local media just takes the time just to ask him one question. Patrick, now that you've seen what happened in the AFC Championship game, now that you've been away from the game for a couple months, what have you learned about the second half of the AFC Championship game? And if I could ask you both, and I'll start with you, Trevor, what confidence do you have, not just because of his greatness before the AFC Championship game, what confidence do you have in Andy Reid, Matt Nagy to work with what happened specifically to Patrick Mahomes in the second half? How confident are you going into this season and what he can overcome?
For me personally, I have all the confidence in the world. I think Matt Nagy was a good addition to bring him back, a familiar voice, a guy that Patrick is confident in. My confidence relies within Patrick Mahomes, though. I think we started to see the evolution of him kind of reeling in his game a little bit, but it did come back to bite him because he wasn't there completely yet. And with that game against Cincy, it was unforgivable. That's an unforgivable moment in Patrick Mahomes' career, and that's gonna linger with us until he heals that. And we've talked about this on the show before, and this was my number one biggest concern of this offseason was Patrick Mahomes' mental state and how he rebounds and responds to that. Not only the criticism of what he was taking, whether it's jokes at the ESPYs or all the national talking heads that are talking about Patrick Mahomes has fallen off and this might be the beginning of the end for Patrick Mahomes and blah, blah, blah. I don't believe that. I think he's the truth. I think he's the best quarterback talent in this league. But he's gonna have to go out there and show that. He's gonna have to go out there and remind some people because we have very short attention spans. We like to let guys, be the best in the league and then immediately be the worst in the league, within a nightly basis sometimes. Very overreactionary. I don't think he's that way, though. I think Patrick Mahomes is just an amnesia type of guy that goes out there and he's going to go out there and do what he does regardless of what anybody thinks or says. And I think that's what's so attractive to him from Andy Reid's standpoint is he has a guy that's going to go out there and sling that rock and is going to try to make the best play every single play. And I'm expecting Patrick Mahomes to be Patrick Mahomes this season. And I fully expect, there is a scenario where this could definitely affect Patrick Mahomes and this could linger for the remainder of this season. Who knows how long, but I don't think that's the reality of the situation. I think Patrick Mahomes is one of those guys that's going to go out there and just be great every single time. He's going to have his moments. He's going to have his stumbles like we saw, but I'm fully on board with the idea that Patrick Mahomes is going to go out there. And Nagy being back is a good, like I said, a familiar voice for him to kind of comfort him. Not that he needs to be coddled. He needs to be critical of himself, and people need to be critical of him in moments that he's let us down and he's let himself down. But I fully expect this Chiefs team, maybe not this season, to be what we expect them to be moving forward, but this could be a pivotal season, obviously with all the picks and then the new faces that are going to possibly be here, and familiar faces that are not here anymore. This is a big pivotal move in Patrick Mahomes' career to see what he can do. That's kind of been the storyline. Without Tyreek being here, is Patrick Mahomes going to be exposed? Blah blah blah. I'm not on that. I'm not in that boat at all. We know who Patrick Mahomes is, and I fully expect Patrick Mahomes to go out there and be himself, and that's the best quarterback in the NFL.
The last week of February, for episode 156, we had Patrick's father, Pat Mahomes Sr., on our show, and this is something that we talked about very specifically. And I remember Pat said something to me that I felt that I already knew, but I needed to hear it. And hearing it from his father really gave me a lot of peace, a lot of solace, and quite frankly, a lot of confidence in what we're going to see moving forward from Patrick Mahomes after such an abrupt and, quite frankly, devastatingly frustrating collapse in the AFC Championship. He said that Patrick... when it comes to Patrick and his competitiveness and what matters to him, losses hurt him more and drive him and motivate him more than wins feel good and drive him and motivate him. Which means that the obsession of not losing is more important to Patrick than actually going out and winning. Now, winning is his most important goal because obviously if you ain't losing, you're winning. But the feeling he got and experienced in that 2018 AFC Championship loss, the feeling he had in the 2020 Super Bowl loss, the feeling that he had in that 2021 AFC Championship loss is what's going to drive Patrick to be greater than what we've even seen to this point. Now, statistically, it's going to be very consistent because I think Patrick's one of those guys that's going to throw between 4,500 to 5,000 yards a season, 35 to 50 touchdowns a season. Those are just going to be a given because he's just that great, and Andy Reid knows how to write up and draw up great plays. Matt Nagy coming back, EB still being in the equation. Those are going to be offenses that are going to still have big numbers. But I'm talking about things like that not happening again because the greatest of the greats have had collapses like that. We've seen Tom Brady have 4 or 5 collapses very similar to that. He had a losing record to Peyton Manning in the AFC championships they faced, which was, by the way, 4 times, and he went 1-3 against them. So even with the expectations we have and the comparisons we make, I don't think we've even seen the best version of Patrick. I know that's easy for me to say, but I'm not even talking in a statistical sense. I'm talking about in a mental sense because I think this type of loss, although it's never acceptable, it's nothing that we ever want to relish and think about and dwindle on, it's something that Patrick Mahomes will. It's something he's going to think about. It's something he's going to obsess over. Because you think it hurts us? Imagine how it makes him feel knowing that he was one of the catalysts for it occurring. So trust me when I say, and I feel very confident in saying it, we're going to see a better Patrick Mahomes because of that game specifically. Because we saw that guy at the tail end of last season and in the playoffs last season before that second half play at an historic level. Before that second half, Patrick Mahomes had more touchdowns in that playoff run than Tom Brady has ever had in any playoff run of his career. That's historic. And that guy's going to build upon that loss, that collapse, because he's the type of guy that doesn't accept defeat. He uses it as fuel and motivation. So to answer your question as soundly and as efficiently as I can, Shane, I think you're going to see a very open and honest Patrick Mahomes in his opening pressers in practice. He's going to own up to everything that took place because he knows he's the leader. And as time goes on, as specific as it is now with Tyreek Hill and Tyrann Mathieu and other guys that even predate Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, he knows this is becoming more and more his team as the older he gets, which means more onus and responsibility is on his shoulders, and he's the kind of guy that can carry that load.
Amen. I'm glad you answered that question. And the reason why I specifically asked you about that question is after every playoff loss, it's what we do, going back to 1990. I'm not going to go back to 1990 and every playoff loss, but just specifically of late, when the Chiefs lost to the Super Bowl, we thought we knew the problem. Oh, man. Problem that game is our offensive line. Creed Humphrey, the rest of the second-round draft pick, Nick Bolton. The Chiefs as a whole, the entire organization addressed why they lost that playoff loss. In 2018, when we lost, why did we lose? D. Ford, Bob Sutton, they addressed it. So, and I don't need to go back for other playoff losses. You see why and how they were addressed. And when we look at the playoff loss 2 months ago, we know how it happened. I wanted to get your feelings on it. I love what you guys had to say, and I want to thank you for it. And I will be back here on the Shaggy Shane Kansas City Chiefs show 2 weeks from today, breaking down the 2022 draft. You can find me on Twitter. I don't tweet much. I just tweet now and then. But you can find me at Twitter at Shaggy Shane KC. You can find me on YouTube. Just search Shaggy Shane Chiefs. I want to thank you guys for having me on your show. It's been a blast. And but you want to know my last thing I'm going to say, Lance and Trevor? This is the most important thing because I feel it in my gut. Everything I just said, I hope happens with the guys we pick. I predict sometime between next Thursday and Monday before the draft, Brett Veach will trade his first and second round draft pick for either DK Metcalf or Deebo Samuel. Do I want it to happen? No, but it is in Brett Veach's DNA. It's who he is. So when you wake up next Thursday, sometime between next Thursday and Monday, and see the Chiefs have traded a first and second round draft pick for either Deebo Samuel or DK Metcalf, remember where you heard it. Like I said again, do I want it to happen? No. Like I said here last year on Halloween weekend and said, the Chiefs could trade Tyreek Hill, and it happened. I got bombarded with private messages saying, you were right on the spoken. I heard you on the spoken saying the Chiefs could trade Tyreek Hill in the offseason, and it happened. I had to reply, I didn't want it to happen. I just said it could happen. My prediction, I don't have a source. I don't have a source. It's just in Brett Veach's DNA because last year on Friday, Brett Veach went to the press conference and did a big press conference saying, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. We got a lot of draft capital. We can do this. After that press conference with the media, 1 hour later, the Chiefs traded for the left tackle they needed, Orlando Brown. I predict the Chiefs will trade for Deebo Samuel or DK Metcalf. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, but I think it will. And with that, I'm out of here, guys. I love you.
You're dropping the mic.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, we love you, Shane.
Love you too, man. Thanks, Trevor. Thanks, Lance.
Yes, sir.
No problem, man. Thank you so much for being here. Man, he dropped the mic on that one. That was and make sure we unmute that. Yeah, that was man, that was awesome. That was I like the fact he ended it with that because now we can kind of jump into that a little bit and discuss that. Are we unmuted on the? By the way,
Yeah, it should be.
Is it unmuted?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or muted. I'm sorry, muted, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're good. All right, awesome. So, man, I love the fact he gave us something to kind of chew on after the segment because that was something I was thinking about a little bit. Remember, we talked about some of the wide receivers we'd like to see the Chiefs trade for.
I mean, Deebo,
Jason Dunn.
I'm on board.
Jason Dunn was saying Tyler Lockett, a guy like that. More than likely, Washington or Seattle keeps Tyler Lockett because he's just such a great person and player, as our guy JD was alluding to. But I'm gonna say some things about Shaggy's take on that. I actually think that is realistic.
Yeah.
And I don't know specifically if it's going to be with DK or Debo, even though both guys could very well be traded.
Some big names.
The two problems I have with both those guys is I don't, first of all, think DK is an elite receiver, or I don't think he'll ever be. I think he'll always just be a real freak specimen, good, productive receiver. That's what he's going to be. A guy that gets around 1,100 yards and 9 to 10 touchdowns a season. Good. That's very good. That's very, very good. But you can get that from Juju Smith-Schuster.
He's good at what he does.
And so that's, if the Chiefs were to trade for DK, they're going to have to pay him around $25 to $26 million a year. And there's no way in hell I'm doing that if they're not willing to pay Tyreek $30.
Right.
And then you also bear in the fact that Deebo Samuel, although a lethal weapon in this league, is going to be 27 this next season. Do the Chiefs want to give a long-term deal to him? Because him and his guy on Instagram are talking about it's 25 plus or nothing. Yeah. Like, I think Debo's going to want the bag as well.
He's arguably the most deadliest weapon in the NFL.
But that's the thing is I think a bad team's going to be going after guys like that. I think you're going to see Debo go on a team like the Jets, a team who was desperate for a receiver, was trying to go after Tyreek Hill as well. Didn't get him. I could see a Debo Samuel or DK Metcalf going to the Jets, the Giants, a team like that, a bad team that's willing to pay them the money they're looking for. I think with those two guys that could happen. But Shane could be very well be right, because although he says he doesn't want to see it happen, he also didn't want Tyreek to get traded. He saw that coming as well, or at least felt it. Yeah. So I do think, though, on the flip side of that, to add to Shane's point, I do think the Chiefs are going to trade for a wide receiver. I do think that you're going to see a guy like a Terry McLaurin. I do think that they're going to try for a guy like Tyler Lockett. I do think you're going to see them go after guys like that. Maybe
DJ Moore.
I would love that, but Laviska Shenault, somebody like that. The Chiefs are going to try to trade for, because then that would justify them not trading up for a wide receiver. They can go and extend a guy who's a proven commodity in this league who's still in his mid-20s. I think that's going to be a realistic scenario. I do think the Chiefs trade up in the draft. I don't agree with Shane on them sitting back. I do like the scenario he painted with going and getting multiple defensive players. I love that.
Those are aggressive moves.
I do think with the 12 picks that the Chiefs are going to use some of those picks to go and move up and get a defensive player. My ideal move obviously is going and getting Josh Allen, but that really comes down to what the Jaguars want. Man. Do they really want to go and give him up? That's the question. They still have another year of control, and then they can franchise tag him if they wanted to. Yeah. But I do think that the Chiefs are going to get a veteran receiver that they don't have right now. I do think that there's going to be some sort of trade. I do agree with Shane. I just don't know if it's going to be one of those two guys, because I think the price tag on those guys is just going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, and you're not looking for a one-year rental anymore. We got, you got Juju on that kind of deal. We got a proven deal for McCall here, and then we got MVS for a couple years at least. So we do need to solidify another skilled player. And I think Laviska would be a good addition. I think he's probably the cheapest option, probably too, the free agency as far as guys that I would like to see in a Chiefs uniform. But Debo would be. I mean, he's gonna want money, so that's a pipe dream for me, because Debo would be like, in this offense, Debo would be. You think he's good in the San Fran offense? This offense, it would be unreal to see a guy like that. And that'd be the ultimate Tyreek replacement. But granted, if we were gonna trade Tyreek and not for money issues, maybe a couple other issues on top of that, I'm not gonna pay another guy, Tyreek money when we could have just kept Tyreek here. It didn't make much sense, but there's options, man. It's an aggressive move, and Veach is an aggressive kind of guy, so I would not be surprised if something like that happened.
Well, I definitely appreciate our guy Shaggy, and I hope you guys follow him. He's got an amazing following already, but if you have not subscribed to his YouTube channel, if you guys have not followed him on Twitter, please do so. He's about as transparent, thorough, and as honest, and quite frankly, knowledgeable as any Chiefs fan is out there.
The ultimate representation of Chiefs Kingdom.
100% agree, yes. Sure. I do want to transition to something else before we get to handing out some L's in the world of sports. So I don't know if you guys saw a little over an hour ago, we did post our round one of the NBA playoff predictions, which, by the way, the playoffs are going right now as we speak on this particular podcast. So Eddie had his list. Trevor, you got yours, and I got mine. Eddie had the Suns beating the Pelicans in 5 games. He had the Jazz beating the Mavericks in 7. The Nuggets over the Warriors in 6. The Grizzlies over the T-Wolves in 7. Then on the Eastern Conference side of things, has the Heat beating the Hawks in 5. The Sixers beating the Raptors in 6. The Bucks beating the Bulls in 7. Whew. And then the Celtics beating the Nets in 5. Trevor, go ahead and give us your picks, and then I want to give you mine, and then we can do a brief discussion on what we see in this first round taking place.
So are we just doing the West, or are you just going all the way through?
No, West and East. Yeah, East and West.
Okay, so yeah, I had the Suns. I think I like this Pelicans team, I'm not going to lie. Yeah. I think since the CJ McCollum addition, I think they are a good team and a very potent offense at times. I just don't think they're going to be good enough. I think the defense and the overall experience that the Suns have gained these past couple seasons, and then obviously being the champs, Book is on another level this year. I didn't expect him to just take that and just run with it. He's been incredible this year. And Chris Paul hasn't been the best. He's been in and out with health issues, which is known with him. But the Suns team's just too good. I had them winning in 5. And then I have the Mavericks beating the Jazz. I like this Mavericks team. I know Luka's missing game 1. That sucks. They're probably going to lose that one. But this Mavericks team, especially since the Porzingis trade, They've found a new groove, and with that Dinwiddie signing, I loved that signing. He's been incredible. He's hit 2 game winners like within the first couple of weeks of him playing there. So that chemistry with him and Luka has been great. I have the Mavericks winning that series, and the Jazz always find ways to fail. Always, whether it's the first or second round, they always find ways to fail. Whether it's coaching or it's just a collapse in the leadership of the players, whatever it is, they always find ways to lose. So I got the Mavericks winning that series in 7. Should be a hard-fought series. Warriors, I had the Warriors beating the Nuggets. I know that's an upset right now, but a lot of this, especially in the first round, experience is huge in the first round. This is a tough match. This could be like a Western Conference Finals right here sometimes, you would think. But this West is so stacked, but I think Steph lights it up in this series. I think Klay comes alive in moments and big moments. Draymond's finally starting to play some healthy basketball. Wiggins can be that contributor that they need. I had them winning in 7 games as well in that series. And I have Grizzlies over Timberwolves. I just think the Grizzlies are by far the better team. I think Ja's a true elite talent in this league. So I have them winning in 5 or 6. I had the Heat beating the Hawks. The Heat are just the better team. I had them winning in 6. 76ers over Raptors. That's going to be a fun series to watch. But I just think the Sixers are just too good. I think they're going to win in 5. And then the Bucks, I like this Bulls team. They're entertaining, but the Bucks is just the experience, the Giannis being who he is, the defense of the Bucks team. That's going to be too much for them. But I am giving the Bulls 2 wins. So I have them winning in 6 in that series, the Bucks in that series. And then I have the Nets beating the Celtics. I know a lot of people think this Celtic team, but the Celtics are another one of those teams that finds ways to lose. Jason Tatum, I love him to death. He's one of the best talents in this league, but he finds ways to choke. He finds ways to disappear at times and be extremely inefficient in the playoffs at times. This could be the time where he takes that next step, but I think the addition of KD and just Kyrie, I think he's been playing out of his mind lately. And I think this is a really big series to him. I think they're going to be too much of them, but I have it going 7 games. And I like this series a lot. This is going to be a fun one to watch.
Our picks are pretty much split in half with this one, man. I think that this is going to be one of the more fun first rounds that we've had in a long time because I feel that there's about 5 teams I think you can legitimately win the finals this year. And that's never been the case. It's always a LeBron team versus a couple other teams at best. There's a lot of parity in this one, but I feel very good about my picks. I'm taking the Suns over the Pelicans, and I have the Suns sweeping the Pelicans because I just don't think that the Pelicans have enough star power to hang tough with the Suns. Chris Paul's going to be back with his hand. I think he's getting back, or he has been back.
Yeah.
And he's going to be back in the swing. Book has been playing like a top 5 player in the league.
They're such a good team.
And they're so in
the rotation of guys.
Monty's got that team just rolling. It's like they didn't miss a step from last year.
I didn't expect them to be this good, honestly.
Yeah, I just think the Pelicans are going to be outclassed. I don't even think they get a game in this one. I think the Suns, because the Suns are also a great road team. I think that they're just going to beat the Pelicans senselessly in this series. It's going to be an outclassing. The Mavericks, I am taking over the Jazz in 7. And the reason I'm having it as 7 is because Doncic will miss the first game.
Yeah.
I do agree with you. They will lose the first game, but it's not like Doncic is going to come back and just be 100%.
Well, they got Brunson and Dinwiddie who are 2 capable guys.
But this series is going to be depending on Doncic's health.
Yeah.
Because if Doncic is healthy or healthy enough, they are going to win this series. But a calf strain, man, that can last for months.
And it can be aggravated.
Yeah, that just really sucks. I don't know, and I'm still going to give them the advantage because I do believe they're the better team, and I do think they squeak out the victory in this series. When it comes to the Warriors-Nuggets series, a couple months ago, it had been foregone conclusion to pick the Warriors. I'm not. I'm picking the Nuggets because I think they have the healthier superstar player in this series. Jokic is playing at an MVP level. Probably he could very well win MVP. Yeah. And the Warriors, although on paper are the better team in my opinion, the Klay Thompson is coming into form. Draymond Green's a one-sided player, and Steph Curry is very injured, and we don't even know if he's going to play Game 1. They're saying consideration. I'm taking the Nuggets in 6 games. The Grizzlies are the team that I think could very well get to the finals. And I think the T-Wolves are a team that, although are fun, and you got your Pat Bevs out here jumping around taking his shirt off, for a play-in victory, I think the Grizzlies are going to outclass the T-Wolves in this one. I do think that Cat is going to have one big game where he even drops up to like 45, 50 points and squeaks out a big home victory, and they just get, feeling really good about themselves. But I have the Grizzlies winning this series in 5. Yeah. I just think they're going to outmatch the T-Wolves. I just don't think the T-Wolves are going to be able to hang tough. And then on the Eastern side, I think the Heat are going to make quick work of the Hawks, especially after that game last night. Trae Young is going to do his thing. Yeah. But they lost Clint Capella.
Yeah.
Clint Capella had that knee injury last night.
He's that glue guy.
And I don't know if they're going to be able to even win a single game without Clint Capella's defense and his rim protection and rebounding and things of that nature, alley-oops. Yep. I think the Heat are just a significantly better team, and they're going to sweep the Hawks. And then in the 76ers series, I was actually tempted to pick the Raptors in this one. And the reason why is because of the fact what I've been preaching all along.
They're a good team.
I don't, and more so, I don't believe in James Harden. I never have. I think in the playoffs he sinks, he gets desperate, he gets even more inefficient than he was. Joel Embiid, I feel so bad for him because he deserves better than this. But the moment I saw the trade go down with the Sixers getting Harden, I almost LOL'd because I'm like, I just don't think it's going to help them.
And Joel Embiid's got a tough matchup with Siakam, man.
Exactly.
That's a tough matchup.
But I am going to give the Sixers this series. I think that they have the better star talent. You want to talk about experience?
Yeah.
What about Doc Rivers? I know Nick Nurse has gotten his, so I want to give him respect. But Doc's been doing this for 25 years, and he was a former player.
And he's failed a lot, though, too.
He has, no doubt. And if this series gets to a place where they're up 3-1, I'd get worried, as crazy as that sounds, because Doc knows how to choke away a series. Yeah. I think this one's going to be like a 1-1, 2-2, 3-3 type of series, and the Sixers pull it out because they have the home court advantage, and I think they win it in 7 games. The Bucks are my championship favorites. I think they're going to repeat. I think that Giannis is the best player in the world.
They've kind of been coasting this year.
Yes, Drew Holiday is getting back healthy. They got themselves their depth for the most part back. I think they're going to sweep the Bulls. And I agree with you, Trevor. The Bulls are fun.
I gave them 2
games.
games.
Team is on the rise. I love DeMar DeRozan's
fast
story.
Pace.
Yeah, I just think the Bucks are just going to outclass them, just like I talked about the Grizzlies and the Timberwolves. I think it's going to be fun, things of that nature, but I just think the Bulls are going to outclass. They started off so hot this season.
You have 2 sweeps in this.
I have 2 sweeps.
Round.
Yes, I do.
Wow.
Actually, I have 3. I have the Suns over the Pelicans in 4, the Heat over the Hawks in 4, and the Bucks over Bulls in 4. In the first round, you do see sweeps. That does happen.
Yeah, I mean, this is just such a stacked competitive matchups here, man.
This is where you and I completely disagree.
Yeah.
I don't think the Nets are going to win this series. In fact, I think that the Celtics win it in 6. And the reason why is that although, yes, without question, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are the 2 best players in this series.
I think the Celtics should win, just to throw that out there. I think they should win.
Having said that, after you're talking about after KD and after Kyrie, who've only played, 10 games as a whole this season together?
Yeah.
Outside of that, they have 0 depth. 0. I know Seth Curry is a solid player.
Simmons is supposed to be back game 2 or 3.
Maybe, yes, but not having Joe Harris there all season, losing Dinwiddie, those guys last year, and all this stuff like. I just don't feel like this team has enough depth. And here's another thing: coaching's got to matter at some point. Yeah. And I don't believe in Steve Nash at all. I do not. Yeah. And here's the thing: the not to rip from our guy Nick Wright or not, but he's 100% right about this. Most times, you see the uptick in minutes for the star players in the playoffs because obviously it's the playoffs. But Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving have been playing over 40 minutes a night. And Kevin Durant doesn't have any durability. He's always hurt. Yeah. Kyrie Irving is always hurt, and you can't rely on him. So the Celtics, to me, who, by the way, since All-Star break have the best record in basketball, I think they're going to carry that into the playoffs. And I'm on the side that you theorized, Trevor, that maybe this is the year that Jason Tatum comes into his game in the playoffs.
Very well could be.
I think this is it.
I hope
because
it
the
is.
Nets are terrible defensely.
I want to see KD lose, man.
I think Jason Tatum's going to average over 30 in this series. And I think Jaylen Brown are going to get that monkey off their back, bro, where they finally win a big playoff series. Because they haven't done it to this point.
It's big for Coach, too, man.
This is big for, yes, exactly. I think this is a great opportunity for the Celtics to do it. I think they win this series in 6. Those are our first round picks and predictions. Let's see how they go, and then we'll get into the second round and then the conference finals, and obviously in the finals as that come about. Want to throw those out there real quick.
Fun.
I lied to Trevor. I said we only had one more thing to get to before Hold the Cell. Our guy Stan Simmons actually dropped us a little note on the Anchor app, which, by the way, we recommend that you guys do that as well. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel. We would very much appreciate that. But our guy Stan Simmons did leave a voice message on our Anchor app, and I'm going to play that now.
Well, Lance, the Clippers lost. I'm a frustrated Clipper fan. I've been a Clipper fan since 2007. I've been a California resident. Kansas City will always be in my heart. It's in my blood. But the Clippers are my adopted team since I've been living here in California. Been my adopted team since 2007. I tried to listen to the other teams, Lakers, Warriors, Kings, but I just like the Clippers' mentality of being the underdog, always being that team that just isn't good enough. So watch them lose again tonight. What do they need to do to finally win? Trevor, Lance, help me out here, guys. What do the Clippers need to do to finally win?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Stan, because I know you didn't really like my thoughts and opinions on the Clippers being an abject failure, because I understand, having superstar talent, having superstar ability, you should have high expectations, which everybody did when it came to the Clippers. The moment Kawhi Leonard and Paul George teamed up and went to the Clippers, everyone just assumed this would be a team that would contend for titles. And the best they've done was gotten to the Western Conference Finals, and they couldn't get that done. And now we're looking at a team that did not have Kawhi Leonard at all season long. Won't be in the playoffs because they're not even going to be in the playoffs, but wouldn't have been there anyway. Paul George, who the biggest game of the year ends up in protocols, COVID protocols, I believe it was. The best way that I can describe it, because I'm not an NBA GM, and obviously I can't sit here and just construct a great team and show you how to do it and map it all out, and this is the perfect way of doing it. But the best way of doing it is capitalizing on the market you're in. Because in the NBA of all sports, market matters. And I think that if you utilize that and lean into the LA area a little bit more, and also I think there needs to be a little bit of a separation, because when you share the same building, that creates a little bit of an awkwardness, especially when you're sharing the building with an historic franchise like the Lakers. I know that Steve Ballmer, the owner of the Clippers, is going to be moving them to another facility soon. I think that's going to help them dramatically, because it's going to get them out of the shadow of the Lakers. And yes, that shadow will still hit them a little bit because it's still in the LA area. But I do think having your own entity, your own facility is going to be so paramount for the Clippers getting back, or at least getting to, at some point, to real prominence and success when it comes to playoff success. And I think that one of the biggest mistakes the Clippers made of late was hitching their wagon to a guy like Kawhi Leonard and expecting him to be your franchise changer. Because even with the Raptors, I know people always talk about, well, Lance, he won a title with the Raptors as the man. That's true. But that team went 17-5 that season without him. That was a really, really, really good team without him. Now, he did put them over the edge because he was healthy enough throughout the playoffs to get them over the edge. But also, let's bear in mind here some context as well when it came to that finals matchup with the Warriors. Kevin Durant tore his Achilles in game one, and then in Klay Thompson later on in that series blew his knee out. So they lost two of their three best players in that series. That's the reason why the Raptors won that series. And they were a really good team. Kawhi was really good in the playoffs. He was absolutely just killing it, right? But they won that series because of the fact the Warriors lost Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson. So at his apex, Kawhi Leonard as the man lucked out in a way that we've never seen another superstar player get. So moving to the Clippers, I thought was a terrible idea for the Clippers to hitch their wagon to Kawhi Leonard and to Paul George, because neither one of these guys have proven to me that they can be the guy at the biggest moments against the greatest competition. And it's been proven to be true. So Stan, I love you to death, bro. You know I do, and I love the support you give us. But unfortunately, until the Clippers get out of the facility they're in, get out of the shadow of the Lakers, I don't think that's going to happen. They need to lean into their market more, and they need to go out there and swing big for another big-time guy. I don't know who that's going to be, because I don't know who's going to be available at the time that they do that, but that's what they need to do, and I think that's the best way of doing it. And to segue into that, we have one more order of business to get to. Trevor, what's it called? Hold this L! Each and every week, we finish off each and every episode with a series of L's in the world of sports, whether they're friendly or not friendly L's in the world of sports. We promise you, who is ever holding the L's this week for us, they deserve those L's. Trevor Twidwell, who's holding the L for you this week?
All right, so I'm just going to start going right into this article and read this article. It starts off with this. Usually when you're a professional baseball team and your opponent has the bases loaded in the fourth inning of a game, you want to do whatever it takes to not give up a run. Well, that is unless you're Joe Madden and the Los Angeles Angels. Because if you're them, you apparently just let the other team score a run. In fact, you make sure they score a run by doing one of the strangest things a team could do in that situation. Intentionally walking a hitter with the bases loaded. That's what they did on Friday night when they opted to intentionally walk Texas Rangers shortstop Corey Seager with the bases loaded in the bottom of the 4th inning. For real. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw that. This is one of the things about baseball I just don't like, man. You have that ability to kind of just opt out on certain situations and avoid players. That's okay sometimes in certain situations, I guess. But with the bases loaded and you're willingly giving up runs, and obviously they went on to lose that game as well, so it did nothing to help that game moving forward. The Rangers just went on to win that game pretty easily. It's just for me, that's just a cowardly type of mentality to have. That's a losing mentality to have. Honestly, I think there should be some rules against that, where you should be forced to pitch to whoever's at the plate. I think that's just one of those things that needs to kind of go in baseball. I really do. I think just intentionally walking and, just avoiding a person, I feel it's just cowardly at nature. I think the nature of it is cowardly. I really do. So I just don't understand. I know the baseball season just getting started. We already got articles shitting on certain teams. This is a bad look. And the Angels aren't a bad team either. They got a lot of talented guys. They could have very well won that game if they figured out a way to get out of that situation. I know the bases were loaded. That's the worst situation you can be in. You got Seager at the plate, bases loaded. That's a tough thing to be in. But I think just intentionally walking and giving up points is just a stupid thing to me, no matter what sport it is. Giving up points for free is just a dumb thing. So, yeah, for that, MLB rules and regulations, the way things are in the game still, and specifically to the Los Angeles Angels for pretty much just handing a team a win. I know it's a long season, but just doing that is just a dumb thing to me. It still never makes sense to me. It doesn't compute in my mind. So for that, do me a solid and
hold this L. I'm glad you brought that one up, Trevor, because baseball has become the overthinking man's game. That's what I quantify it as. But another guy that thinks himself a little too highly than what he really was is a guy that I like to call Jason Biggs on stilts. Mr. Enes Kanter, or who they call himself Enes Freedom now, or whatever his name is, said that he came out yesterday. the NBA Central on Twitter actually had this article that was released, and I had myself quite a laugh. One of his quotes was saying, "I was a starter, and they come and tell me after a year that I forgot how to play basketball. They are trying to retire me at 28. So he's basically, Enes Kanter, or Enes Freedom now, is trying to say that there is a blackballing of sorts with him in the NBA because of the things he's spoken out on when it came to the China situation, when it came to LeBron James, and how Enes Kanter has basically tried to become Enes Bayless in his attempt to try to tear down LeBron James' legacy. He's basically trying to say that the NBA is trying to get rid of him, and because he was a starter. So what I did as a responsible person that likes sports is I go up and look up the facts. And when it comes to the whole starting portion of things, I went and looked it up, and what do you know? Over the last 4 years, Enes Kanter has started less than 50 games. In fact, last season, he only played in 35 games total and had one start. 35 starts the season before that, 7 starts the season before that one, and 8 starts before that one. Then in 2018, 2019, he had 23 starts. In 2017 and 2018, had 31. 2016 and 2017 had 0. And in 2015 and 2016, had 1. So I'm not really sure I understand the whole calling himself a starter thing when the guy was basically a spot starter for guys that got injured. But also the fact that this season, Enes Kanter averaged 4 points a game. And we had a career low in rebounds per game, career low obviously in points per game. Maybe it's just the fact that after 5 different teams that have taken you on, Enes, and with all the controversy attached to you, maybe you're just not good enough. Maybe that's just the facts. Okay. Instead of, trying to project all your, problems on everybody else, maybe try to take a little responsibility for yourself, because you kind of put yourself in this position. Because in all actuality, in all honesty, I do think he's good enough to be on a roster somewhere. But you have to remember that when you bring on the attention that you do, and you become a circus or a sideshow, and you're not a great, prolific player that any team would be willing to take on, These are the kind of consequences you will face. Colin Kaepernick was not good enough to deal with the circus he had around him. Whether you agree with him politically or not, the fact is, Colin Kaepernick wasn't a top 10 quarterback, and that's why he's not in the league. Because I guarantee you, if Patrick Mahomes or one of these other guys took the stances that Colin did, they'd still be playing football. You know why? Because they're elite talents. Look what Aaron Rodgers has done over the last couple of years. You know why Aaron Rodgers is still one of the premier quarterbacks in the league on a premier team? Because he's great. And guys like Ennis Freedom don't seem to grasp that. They have this self-entitled mentality where they think they can say and do whatever they want, and there's going to be no repercussions for that. You're not good enough, Ennis. And I know that you've been on the jock of LeBron for the longest time, and you think that's going to give you some credibility, some credence, and some clout, but all it's gotten you is unemployed. So do me a solid, Mr. Ennis Cantor, or like to call you Jason Biggs on stilts. Do me a solid, brother, and hold this L. You know, I was going to give it to the Clippers, but I'm not going to do that to my guy Stan Simmons.
Yeah.
I feel like we've already touched on it. I feel like we already gave the proper attention to that situation. But enjoy that L regardless, Mr. Clippers. I appreciate the annual flame out, if you will.
I think Pat Bev was giving it to him good enough. That had to hurt, man.
Well, this is a fun show, man, and we got really in depth with a lot of Chiefs stuff, guys, and it's not going to change, and it's only going to get heavier because, as our guy Shane said in his segment, we're about to have a lot more news coming out because the Chiefs workouts are starting up. Man, it's just football 24/7, 365, man. I'm telling you, we get football all year round, which is why our podcast continues to go every single week because we always have something to talk about, and you guys know the majority of what we talk about here is football related. Yep. So it's been a great show. We had an absolute blast. We wish our guy Mr. Yo Eddie Ortiz was here, but we held it down, man. I feel like we did a really good job, and it was a lot of fun. If you didn't like it, well, go find another damn podcast. But in the meantime, for Trevor Twidwell, for the great Clay Windler that puts all this together, for Shaggy Shane Williams, I hope that you guys, by the way, are following up and subscribing to our YouTube channel. Get us to those numbers. Help us get us to those numbers, man, so we can start monetizing this stuff like Trevor said last week. We'd love to get more opportunities, more availabilities to do things that we want to do as a show. We put in over 160 episodes. We're really trying to get to the place we feel that we need to get to. We have some goals to reach, and we can only do it with the help of you guys, and we appreciate everyone that's already tagged along with us to this point. But like I said, for Trevor Twidwell, for Clay Windler, for the great Shaggy Shane Williams, I am Lance Twidwell of the Spoken Podcast. Episode 163 is done, finished, and finito. And until we're here next week for 164, we out of this bitch.
Later.